We discover that there is an online game that gathered 50 million players and a total of 400 servers, with 1 month left before its official release. The only reason for such massive success is the fact that the game recreates a perfectly immersive virtual reality. They even managed to convince people who once claimed that doing so was impossible to embrace this new reality, including the protagonist who inside his tiny apartment finds himself smelling the refreshing scent of the sea. His name is Kiho, and his in-game nickname is Mose. Suddenly, someone shouting grabs the kid's attention. Startled, he turns around to see who it is. Another boy then tells him that if he's just going to stand there staring at nothing, he should move aside because he's getting in the way of the fight. Mose apologizes and the boy says that, as players, they shouldn't get in each other's way. We find out that the protagonist is a slime cleaner, and since Circuit became such a hit, the game's money and items ended up gaining real-world value with 3 item ranks: common, magic, and rare. Items from the first rank aren't worth much, unlike magic items which come with bonus attribute points. Since players gain 1 attribute point per level, equipping an item that gives +1 has the same effect as leveling up. And as they progress, the character's physical abilities increase, allowing them to gain the strength of a professional boxer. Because of that, magic items that give even just 1 attribute point can easily be worth around $10,000. Rare rank items have never appeared in the game since launch, making it even more mysterious. There are rumors about ranks above rare, but for now, magic items are the best available. Such items can drop from slime monsters, which are easy to kill. That leads many players to hunt those little creatures, hoping to strike it rich. This group of players is called Slime Cleaners, and Kiho is one of them. Even so, the drop rate for magic rank items is extremely low. That's why the protagonist has been hunting slimes for over 2 months, still nowhere near achieving his longed-for goal. After another failed hunt, he decides to head to the coastal town of Linderoak. He's shocked when the vendor offers only 20 silver coins for one of his items. Standing in front of him, the old man explains that the market is flooded with slime materials because so many people are selling them, and that's the best price he can offer at the moment. Kiho refuses, takes the item back, and decides to sell it for half the price he originally had in mind. Sitting on a bench, the boy thinks about how he made so little money, even after spending the whole day hunting slimes. But his biggest problem is that slimes are starting to become scarce due to how many people are hunting them. Lost in frustration, he reflects on how long he's been at this, with the most valuable thing he's ever earned being just 5 gold coins. To make things worse, his steel sword, a basic beginner's weapon and a common item, is about to break. And new weapons cost far more than his pathetic 5 gold coins. With tears in his eyes, Kiho concludes that this game is garbage, especially because it's based on luck, and not merit or effort. If it were, he would have already made enough to pay the monthly fee. Watching other players laughing, the boy says that if he had known it would be like this, he would have just enjoyed the virtual reality like everyone else, while working a part-time job these past 2 months. With nothing left to do, he decides it's time to log out of the game. But before that, he needs to check his inventory, since 5 gold coins equal about 500 real-world dollars. Holding onto his hard-earned money, the boy feels like doing this now doesn't seem right, because if he's leaving the game for good, he might as well try to earn a bit more profit first. Looking to the side, Mose wonders if there's anything fun to do. He sees a crowd gathered, shouting, excited about what seems to be a game, where a trembling guy is preparing for his 8th try, begging for it to work this time. A small explosion happens, and we discover that the guy only got a human fish, which isn't edible. He walks away crying and throws the creature into the air, while the others laugh at his misfortune. As he approaches, Kiho wonders if this is some kind of item gacha. Someone then comments that the guy who left could have gotten a better item if he had played a little longer. The game owner draws the crowd's attention to ask if anyone else would like to try their luck, catching our boy off guard as he reveals that a single spin costs 5 gold coins. Seeing the expression on his face, the old man says he looks interested, then asks why he doesn't just give it a try once. Stammering, Kiho says that actually he's just watching. Playing dirty, the man tells him to relax, claiming he can feel a special energy, revealing to everyone that the boy has an incredible amount of luck flowing through his body. Smiling, the old man even says he's been waiting for someone like him to show up. Next to the protagonist, a kid says the man told the exact same thing to the guy who won the fish, which makes the vendor burst out laughing. Not caring, our boy thinks it doesn't matter anymore at this point, and decides to give away his only gold coins for a chance to get a special item. Upon arriving at an inn, he looks out the window, thinking it was for the best to get away from that crowd that only cheered for his failure, even if he had to spend the last of his money renting a room. Looking to the side, Kiho says he doesn't have a single decent memory since he's been busy hunting slimes, so he'll just open the item he bought and get out of there. As he starts the process, a purple light begins to shine from the stone, which leaves the boy quite confused and stunned, remembering everything he knows about the game and how magical items are worth a fortune. He says what's happening before his eyes is nothing like what he saw earlier. The stone keeps glowing brightly as it begins to crack, forcing the protagonist to shield his eyes if he wants to keep seeing. We see that the light is visible even through the window of his room, catching the attention of a man walking down the street. Frightened, the boy ends up falling to the ground. but doesn't take his eyes off the item for even a second. Suddenly, a necklace with a crystal begins to land in his hand, revealing itself to be an item called Star of Polarum, a rare type necklace that greatly boosts the user's HP regeneration. Among many other impressive stats, jaw-dropped, Lee Kiho wonders how that's even possible. A day later, the boy remembers watching Circuit TV, hosted by GM, Korea's second biggest streamer. In that broadcast, the guy talked about the current hot items. The first one, sold for the highest price in the auction house, was the Ring of Anus, a magical rank item. The story was that it had dropped in a northern boss's territory and had a life regeneration effect, which among all magical effects is considered the rarest. And for that reason, it became the most expensive item ever sold. People in the streets were watching, shocked. Moving on to the second hot item, GM said it was the Landorus Cavalry necklace, sold for $39,000. Watching the stream on his phone while on the subway, Lee Kiho thought he'd never get something like that. Until yesterday, when through sheer luck the Star of Polarum ended up in his hands. We find out that before, rare items were considered trash in most games. But everything changed when Circuit was launched 3 months ago, where magical items are now the most valuable in the auction house. Because no rare item had been discovered yet, holding the necklace, the protagonist can't hold back and starts laughing loudly. Tears come streaming from his eyes, making them sparkle. Relieved and incredibly happy, he kneels and thanks the item for appearing. Coming down a bit from his euphoria, the boy wonders how much the object is worth, since its effects are completely different from standard magical items, with the most valuable stat being rated at 17.7. Lee Kiho then concludes that the Star of Polarum must be worth at least $1 million, which means monthly bills won't be a problem anymore. And not only will he be able to afford a great house, he'll also be able to buy the car of the year. Opening the panel, the boy decides to put the item up in the auction house as soon as possible. But as he looks at the necklace, he decides it's better to test it first, because he heard that just having 3 to 5 extra strength makes someone feel completely different. And since he was struggling to kill even a single slime, if he uses the necklace, maybe he can be like the top high rankers out there. Caught in this dilemma, our boy says that if he thinks about all the crap he's already been through, he should just sell it and be happy, but staying and using the item might be the real reward for everything he went through in the last 2 months. Besides, he can sell it whenever he wants. Looking at his attributes, Lee Kiho thinks about how terrible they all are, and decides once and for all to try on the necklace. A very strange sensation starts to run through his body, making him scream in pain and throw himself onto the bed in search of some relief, as he wonders if this is what it feels like to gain 18 levels at once and why someone would create something that does this. Looking at one of his hands, the protagonist concludes that the necklace's side effects won't be pleasant either. Opening his inventory again and grabbing a coin, the boy decides to test his strength. With just 2 fingers, he's able to crush the object, shocked by how powerful he is now. Getting up from the bed, no longer in pain, our boy decides it's time to test his new item in action. We're taken to the great city of Asparagon, and we learn that this is where most players live. It's also where the protagonist is now. Walking through the streets, he thinks that, as expected from a big city, the residents' equipment is really good, wondering if he overdid it by deciding to come here, since all he has besides the necklace is an old sword, making teen hunting a tough task. Because of that last point, Lee Kiho wonders if it wouldn't be better to take a solo quest. Suddenly, someone approaches and asks if he's a swordsman. Without looking properly, the boy says yes. But seeing a young archer behind him, he's surprised. With a friendly smile, the girl asks if he's looking for a party, leaving Mose unsure of what to say. Surprising him even more, the archer grabs both his hands, and smiling says her team has 1 spot left that he can take right now, if he's in. A little distance away, we see a man and a young guy leaning against a wall. Impatient, the armored man asks where Sharon went and why she's taking so long. With a sly grin, the boy says they should wait a bit longer. After all, the girls never let them down before. Reaching out her hand, the girl appears and catches the two's attention, saying she told them she'd find someone. Beside her, we see Lee Kiho. The man's eyes go wide when he sees the boy wearing beginner gear and a sword that looks like it's about to break. Then he quietly asks the girl, his niece, if she really thinks she didn't bring a useless guy to the team. Sharon tells her uncle to relax because even though the guy looks weak, she's certain he's stronger than all of them. She knows this thanks to her eagle-eye skill, which allows her to estimate other people's attributes. Another person walks up, asking if everyone is ready, and the armored man says yes. Lee Kiho is stunned to see that the person is none other than Silborum Mim, guild master of Silver and famous for being a high-level mage, equipped with 5 magic items. Smiling, the gray-haired man says that in that case they can begin, revealing that he'll be joining the raid too. Shouting, he gets the attention of the people nearby to thank them for showing up to the troll's subjugation raid, led by his Silver Guild. Hearing that leaves the protagonist even more surprised. We find out that despite being one of the lowest level monsters, trolls have extremely high regeneration, not to mention monstrous strength, being able to crush a rock with 1 hand, making them opponents that definitely shouldn't be underestimated. Lost in thought, Lee Kiho wonders if he'll be able to win. Out of nowhere, the other guy in the party says trolls are also highly aggressive, stopping only once they've eliminated their opponent. The armored man then says that even so, the creatures are weak against fire and curses and are very slow, making them easy prey if you're used to hunting them, and most importantly, they bring in the cash. Our boy asks if he means money. Explaining, Sharon says the drops you get from trolls can be sold for a good price, like troll strawberry juice used to make potions and their hide and bones used to craft gear. That's why subjugation missions are monopolized by big guilds, and players like them, just getting the chance to participate, should already be extremely thankful. On top of that, the rumors that the Silver Guild is looking for new members seem to be true, which makes everyone even more excited. Guile Nim then says he'd be happy just to get a few drops of troll strawberry juice, because with that money he could pay off some of his college tuition. Kiho is surprised. Upon meeting someone in a situation similar to his, he smiles and tells the guy that he's almost there too. Watching the two of them, the archer girl says she wishes she could go back to her student days. Interrupting the conversation, someone yells, asking everyone to pay attention. A bald man who looks like a monk declares that from this moment on, he'll explain the plan. Stillborn Nim begins to approach, taking the lead, and opens the map right after, announcing that he will now begin explaining the subjugation mission instructions. Everyone there is told to open their respective maps as well. The man then says that over the past few days, his guild members have been taking big risks to set up troll traps. So the plan is first to lure the creatures into each trap, and once one is caught right in the middle of it, everyone should rush in with a focused attack while the monster is weakened. Wrapping up part of the explanation, Silverworm states that since trolls are slower than humans, this mission is likely to succeed. Next to our boy, a guy says that receiving instructions from a famous guild really is different. But Kiho can only think about how he won't be able to experience his boosted stats with that plan. Guy then asks if the way the mission is organized isn't a bit unfair, but the armored man says there's not much they can do. The guy then tells the protagonist that none of the Silver Guild members will be responsible for luring the trolls. Joining the conversation, the archer's uncle says that's because they'll stay in the attack squad to guarantee a bigger reward. Sharon then says that even so, they should be grateful for the chance to participate after all. What if a magical item drops? Our boy realizes that even being part of a group doesn't mean he'll always fight alongside them. Finishing the explanation once and for all, Silverworm says that the rewards will be distributed based on contribution points. Sometime later, around point 3, one of the members of a trio of boys asks if they just need to find a troll. Confirming, the hooded boy says yes, and once they do, they should lure it into the trap. Smiling, the red-haired guy says it's crazy that the guild members go on the attack alone, then asks if they'll be able to do the same once they join Silver. When he notices his friend bumping into his arm, he tells him to watch where he's going, but he's stunned by what he sees. We find out that while the pair were babbling, the third member of their group had been annihilated by a troll, who is now staring at them with glowing orange eyes. Along with its massive horde, mouths agape, the boys wonder how many monsters are there, as the creatures begin roaring non-stop. With nothing else to do, the two of them start running for their lives, realizing this mission won't be as easy as they thought. The hooded guy tells his friend to shut up and just keep running. Desperate, the two flee, not even knowing where to go with the trolls right behind them. Screaming, the red-haired boy asks where the trap is, and his friend says it's right ahead between the trees. The duo then sees several Silver Guild members standing still, and once they get close enough, they celebrate that they made it out alive. Acting prematurely, the red-haired guy grabs his sword, ready to strike the trolls that have been chasing them. But to his misfortune, he steps into a black slime. Paralyzed, he wonders what this stuff is and why he got caught in a sticky oil trap that causes a massive explosion when set on fire. Looking ahead, he sees that his friend was taken out, quickly realizing he's likely next. With no way out, he starts yelling for help, hoping someone from the guild will move. But they all just watch his situation while laughing. Shocked, he asks if this is really what he thinks it is. Taking action, Silborum activates his magical staff, causing a blinding light to radiate through the entire area. Seeing the attack coming toward him, the red-haired boy exhales his final breath. A huge explosion erupts, raising a cloud of dust. Still smiling wickedly, the guild leader states that he said it from the start, that this would be a quick and safe hunt. They just need to find out who's next. Far from there, Kiho and his team are face to face with the area boss of the Black Mountain, wearing a necklace made of skulls and terrifying red eyes, leaving our boy wondering what the hell he just got himself into. We go back in time a bit before that moment when the armored man said he could take down a troll by himself, claiming that the creature's attack power doesn't even compare to his own. Jokingly, his niece says that in that case, if something goes wrong, he'll handle it while the rest run away. Annoyed, the girl's uncle asks why they're acting like he wouldn't come out victorious. That's when the protagonist hears a crack. It seems to come from the top of a mountain. Sharon asks the boy what he just heard. Pointing his finger, Kiho says there was something on top of the big rock. Suddenly, the archer's eyes go wide, because the furious troll has just leaped from the cliff, landing squarely in front of everyone. Turning to face it, our boy is left speechless, as the giant creature prepares to deliver its first strike, which only doesn't hit the pair thanks to the armored man who steps in front and blocks the attack with his shield. Using every ounce of strength in his body, Even so, the monster knocks him down like he's nothing, making Guile scream in panic and concern. Still in shock, the protagonist asks if that's really a troll, without taking his eyes off the creature, which is just inches away. Frozen in place, the boy says the monster is very different from what he heard, because just being in his presence for a moment was enough to feel the heavy atmosphere and soul-hungry aura it gives off. Still unable to move, Kiho can only think that his time has come. Out of nowhere, arrows start flying toward the troll, who uses its arms to shield itself, then shows that it's now angrier than ever. To the misfortune of the archer who attacked it, trying to save the boy, the armored man runs toward the monster, leaving Sharon and the others extremely worried. Despite the risk, we see that the uncle of the group has eyes filled with rage, and is determined to follow through on his claim that he could handle a troll alone. Without hesitation, he activates his shield's power, then uses the collision skill, which aims to strike the target and push it away. The attack works, and the troll starts flying like it weighs nothing, but it grabs onto a tree to plant its feet and stop from going too far, showing that besides being strong, it's also intelligent. Even so, the shield-wielding man feels relieved to have at least created some distance. Nervously, the archer shouts to ask if he's okay. The man says he is, but even though he hit the monster with all his strength, it didn't take any damage. His niece then says the same happened with her arrows and asks what they're supposed to do now. Kiho wonders if it would be a good idea to lure the troll into a trap, taking advantage of its slowness. But Guile says that might not work, since that's no ordinary troll, it's the hidden boss of the quest. Because, on top of being alone, its body is different from the others. Sweating cold, our boy asks if, in that case, they can actually handle it and get out alive. Grabbing a potion, the boy in the green coat says that even if he can delay the monster's regeneration, its strength and defense are extremely high. Drinking the red liquid, the armored man says they only have one choice, which is to hold out until the Silver Guild arrives. Furious, the troll swings its club again. Attacking from behind, Sharon tries to hit one of its vital points, but her arrows just bounce off its tough skin, which makes the girl incredibly angry. Her uncle then tells her to fall back again while Moose keeps covering the rear. Lost, our boy just nods at the command, while wondering what he's even doing there, since he doesn't fit in with the group who have been playing together for a long time and are fully synchronized. And they actually enjoy playing, unlike him, who's just an idiot repeating meaningless tasks without thinking, dreaming of hitting the jackpot for 2 whole months. Even so, his real wish was to have a true adventure with those people. Suddenly, snapping him out of his thoughts, someone shouts his name, to warn him that the troll is about to strike him with full force. With little time to react, the protagonist thinks it's all over. But saving his skin, the armored man jumps in front of him, striking the monster's stomach with his shield again, which almost makes it lose balance and fall. Shouting, the old man of the group yells for Kiho to pay more attention, making the boy wonder if he could change from this moment on. Grinding his teeth, he concludes that from now on, it's already too late. And attacking the troll from behind with his sword, he decides that he must change right now. His blade clashes against the creature's fist, but it shatters as if it were made of glass, because the durability of his weapon has hit 0. And now he's in an even worse situation. Our boy is violently thrown far away. Saliva flies from his mouth as he screams. The armored man can only watch, stunned. Upon hitting the ground, the boy's vitality drops below 20% and his leather gauntlets are destroyed. Screaming, the archer girl tells Guile to dodge. The monster is charging at him. He narrowly avoids a fatal hit. His friend warns that a single blow could send them straight to the afterlife. So now, everyone must scatter across the area as fast as possible. Running, her uncle says he got the plan, and charges the troll again, shield raised. With barely any time to react, the monster grabs the tree trunk once more. But this time, the man's goal isn't to knock it back, it's to strike part of its body. In this case, its foot, which takes a direct hit from the shield. The troll howls in pain, showing that the attack landed well. It shifts its attention to the man slightly below its field of vision. Panicked, the green-jacketed boy yells to warn the uncle of the incoming danger. He looks up, but it seems it's already too late. We see someone sprawled on the ground, surrounded by a cloud of dust. It's Kiho, finally waking up from his blackout. Holding his head, he wonders how he's still alive, only to discover that his stamina has been restored, and all of his wounds have been healed, thanks to the necklace. Surprised, the young man realizes this must be the regeneration effect everyone dreams of. Suddenly, Guile's scream draws his attention. We see the armored man getting struck by a tree the creature ripped out of the ground. Even the protagonist is thrown into a full panic. As the man holds firm with his powerful shield, the uncle yells to Sharon, who picks up on the cue and gets ready to fire. An arrow flies at high speed toward the troll and hits it right in the center of the eye. Clutching the wound, the monster roars again, but it keeps smashing the tree into the armored man, who begins to think this might be the end. With every strike, his body weakens further and his injuries worsen. Taking action, Kiho rushes into the center of the chaos, throwing his own body against the troll's stomach, sending the beast flying shockingly. Stunned, the boy wonders to himself how he even did that, just like Guile, who questions how he shoved a monster that massive. The troll is finally down, and Most thinks he never imagined he could knock it over alone with just his body. Turning to the green-jacketed boy, he asks if he's okay. The young man says yes, but that the armored man got the worst of it. Suddenly, a bright light begins radiating around the uncle's body, shocking the boy beside him. The protagonist then wonders if this might be a regeneration skill that spreads to team members. With his wounds fully healed, the armored man jolts awake, startled. Sitting up, he says his life was restored, while the archer asks our boy how he possesses a skill like that. Still on the ground, the uncle thinks the kid isn't just some ordinary newbie. Stealing the attention again, the troll begins to growl, trying to rise from the ground despite its injured eye. Annoyed, Sharon prepares to fire again, promising to finish the beast off this time. The armored man throws his iron sword to Mose, declaring it's now or never. Our boy catches the weapon with both hands swiftly, and without a second's hesitation, charges the still-dazed troll. Kiho attacks with the sword he was given. Meanwhile, not far from there, we see Silborum looking over his inventory full of items. Granted, he thinks that at this rate, his guild will make about $100,000 in just 10 minutes. We learn that the troll's subjugation mission can only take place if there are more than 120 people in the team. That's why the man decided to call in even more participants, including famous folks to make it look legit. But since the game's loot distribution system is based on contribution after the mission, and he was the one who annihilated most of the trolls, he's going to receive the majority of the drops while pretending to be clueless to avoid any possible conflict. Suddenly, a notification pops up stating that the mission has been completed, revealing that the troll leader of the Black Mountain has been subjugated. Caught off guard, Silborum wonders what's going on, as do the other members of his guild, who find out that the team with the highest contribution was the 13th, and not the Silver Guild as had been planned. We see that Mose managed to defeat the troll alone and received the title of Super MVP, along with a special reward. Out of nowhere, Silborum appears, wounded and groaning in pain, completely alone since his entire team had been wiped out. Hiding behind a tree, the man reveals he's out of mana and health, all because he was trying to reach Team 13, which in his mind had stolen his contribution, ordering his guild to bring the winning team to him immediately. Suddenly, someone approaches, saying they know where he's hiding. And then it's hilarious seeing a famous ranker running like a little rat. We find out it's the Dark Guild. They say he should know exactly why this is happening, since he was the leader of that troll subjugation mission. Completely cornered, Silborum realizes he might not make it out alive. After that, all we see is his scream and strawberry juice splattering everywhere. The next day in the Asparagan territory, a cheerful vendor welcomes Kiho and asks if he's looking for something specific. Shaking his head, the boy hands over a ring with a red gem and says he's looking for the auction house. We go back in time a few hours earlier, where the boy's team is staring in awe at a glowing orb appearing. Sharon says that's a massive core, and her uncle says it must be because it came from a boss. The item, which drops after a monster dies, works like a treasure chest, as it can contain valuable loot depending on the creature's strength. Watching his profit, the protagonist thinks to himself that he never imagined such a big core could drop. Approaching him, the archer says he's the one who should open the treasure chest, since he did more than the rest of the team. Guile agrees and tells the boy to just open it already. Obeying, Kiho places both hands on the large orb, warning everyone that he's about to begin. A bit tense, his new team watches carefully. Suddenly, a bright light begins radiating from the core, and a message appears, stating that the items will be distributed automatically based on contribution level. With eyes glowing, the protagonist thinks that slime hunting doesn't even come close to this. We find out he received the Strength Ring of Argonium Mountain, a magical item that can be listed in the auction for a starting price of 80 euros. Outside the forest, sitting at a table, Kiho wonders if that's a good price, even though that's 8,000 in real life. Concluding that he can't really estimate it since magical item prices vary a lot depending on the type and effects. A bit impatient, our boy decides to screw it and presses the button to start the auction, hoping for an offer higher than the minimum. The sun begins to set over the city. Back in his room, the protagonist keeps thinking about the price he set on the item, trying to convince himself that 80 euros is enough and that he made a good choice. Throwing himself onto the bed, he says he's really tired, while his mind starts to replay everything that happened that day, including his victory over a troll during his very first team hunt, where he also managed to get a bunch of cool items, and even made his first friends in the game, all thanks to the rare necklace he got from the gacha. Waking up in the real world, the boy takes off his VR headset and wonders if he spent too long in the game. Picking up his phone, he sees a message from his mom worried about his meals. Replying, our boy says he's getting paid from work tomorrow, so she didn't need to send anything. Suddenly, another message pops up saying $35 was withdrawn from his account to cover transportation fees. Staring at the screen, Kiho asks if his account's going to be empty before he even has time to get emotional. Suddenly, something else grabs his attention, making his eyes go wide and his jaw drop. We find out the boy just received a transfer of $30,000, thanks to the ring sale. Leaving his tiny apartment, Kiho heads to his circuit store to collect his payment and start preparing to return to the game. In addition, he took another semester off from college, sent money to his mom, ordered some gym equipment, and bought a powder at the store, which will serve as a dietary supplement covering the nutritional gap caused when players can't eat during gameplay. That way, when he eats in-game, the VR machine will release the powder into his body, reducing the need for physiological care. Even so, the protagonist knows the best option is still to log out at a decent time and eat real food. Suddenly, his phone beeps, notifying him that the name Mose is now ranked first in search popularity, and that Silborum's body was found, with the Dark Guild being the main suspect of taking him out. However, what shocks our boy the most is that a guild called Arthur's Trinity is offering 500 gold coins in exchange for any information about him. After thinking for a few seconds, Mose concludes that his in-game life just got a lot more complicated. He decides to rush back to his apartment. He doesn't want anything bad to happen, because if things keep going this way, his freedom in the game and his future will go down the drain. Upon logging in, Kiho chooses to leave Asparagan as soon as possible. We return to the game world, where the boy is far from the city, high up on a mountain, thinking about how he needs to stay hidden. Soon, he'll have to go somewhere very far away. Before making his move, he decides to pick up the equipment made from the Black Mountain hide. The blacksmith who crafted the entire armor says that in his 20 years, he never imagined creating something like this. Smiling, our boy thinks he needed the armor to feel like he's on a real adventure. He thanks the little creature for its services. Leaving the shop, Kiho says it's showtime now, or at least that's what he thought. Reaching a mountainous area, the boy wonders where he is, and sitting on the ground realizes he may have gotten lost. Out of nowhere, a breeze coming from the ground catches his attention. Fearless, Mose decides to place his hand right above the crack. But when a light starts to shine, he quickly pulls back, startled. In front of him, a door opens, revealing a secret passage into the mountain. Shielding his eyes from the strong wind, our boy asks what the hell that is. A message appears saying he's the first to discover a new dungeon called Blackroot Cavern. Inside, everything is pitch black, forcing the boy to use the Belsex Light Stone, a common consumable item. With some visibility, he observes the stone walls around him, quickly realizing that the deeper he goes, the darker it gets. Kiho reaches what appears to be a stone tablet with writing in a strange language. Getting closer, the boy tries to decipher what it is. We find out the message says that the curse words Morudal, Ivory, and Skull imprisoned people, and that deadly shadows ambushed an army, which ended up falling without the chance of an honorable death. Looking back after hearing a noise, the protagonist finds himself face to face with a horde of skeletons clad in armor ready to attack, revealing that he was expecting something like this to happen. Fearless, Mose charges in with his new sword, sending bones flying in every direction with his strikes. The skeleton army is unfazed and retaliates with a coordinated assault. He starts getting nervous while fighting to avoid being hit. Our boy starts thinking this might never end. To make matters worse, he has no combat class, and never properly learned how to wield a sword. So now he has to give it everything he's got if he wants to win this battle. Suddenly, a skeleton grabs him, and all the others pile on top of him, forming a small dog pile. Buried under the creatures, Kiho wonders what to do. He then activates his special power, which causes a bright, radiant light to flood the dark, shadowy space, while simultaneously blasting all the enemies away. We find out that the explosion happened due to the synergy between a rare rank accessory, armor, and weapon. With most of the skeletons defeated, only a few remain standing, showing they won't give up so easily. With a small smirk, the protagonist says it's time to finish this. Sometime later, we see parts of skeletons scattered throughout the dark cave, with Kiho panting in the center, still gripping his sword tightly. Wiping the sweat from his face, he wonders if it's finally over. Suddenly, messages start popping up, informing him that he leveled up twice. Shocked, the boy asks how that's even possible, since he only defeated weak monsters. He then celebrates his great victory. Interrupting his moment, a growl echoes from a hole, making Mose immediately go back on high alert. Looking at the passage, he thinks he definitely heard something coming from there, deciding to approach and see it with his own eyes. The sound continues to echo, and the boy wonders if there's anything there besides skeletons. Passing through a narrow opening, he realizes he might have reached the source. He has to cover his nose because of the disgusting stench inside, which seems to be coming from the corpses of other adventurers who lost their lives there. As he walks, Kiho starts to feel sick from the smell that won't go away. Upon hearing another noise, he decides to climb a massive stone staircase. At the final step, he finds another plaque with a message written on it. Ready to decipher the text, the boy gets a bit closer, revealing that someone wrote about their hatred for the Imperial Army, for burning down a village under the excuse of using its supplies, and for mercilessly annihilating their family, all with the face of a demon. That's why he, Morudal, the village shaman, cast a curse on everyone, sealing the exit from that place forever. We learn that Morudal Ivory Skull was the one responsible for turning the army into skeletons, all to get revenge for the massacre. Upon finishing the reading, our boy can only think about how horrible those soldiers were. Suddenly, a strong light begins to shine from the ceiling, bringing a message about a conflict quest, where Mose needs to subjugate the leader of the deserters named Jiretin, sealed by Morudal. To do so, he must say the cursed words. Bravely, the boy speaks them out loud. The ground begins to shake suddenly, and what looks like a heart emerges. Perplexed, Kiho wonders if those are bones coming together. Answering his question, a massive skeleton with glowing red eyes forms right in front of him, asking how he dares to stain his body with such miserable words, and stating that he should have destroyed the shaman's body entirely instead of just starving him to death. Gripping his sword, the protagonist notices that his hands are trembling. Standing in front of him, Jiraten asks if he's the one who freed him using the cursed words. Stuttering and scared out of his mind, Kiho says that it was indeed him, and that he's here to deliver judgment for the looting of an innocent village. Hearing that sends the great skeleton into a rage, so much that he attacks the boy with full force, throwing him against one of the walls, then asking who he thinks he is to judge him. We see Kiho crash to the ground after creating a crater in the wall of the force of the impact on his back, while Jiraten declares that he won't leave that place alive. We learn that named monsters are extremely unique, because they're absurdly stronger than regular creatures. Trying to get up after losing 20% of his health, Mose admits he didn't expect these creatures to be as strong as the rumors said, concluding that the battle won't be easy at all. The giant skeleton keeps watching him coldly, while he thinks the only good thing is that he'll always recover as long as he doesn't take a fatal hit. Charging again, the creature asks what kind of wicked magic the boy used to heal so quickly. Seeing a fist coming straight at his face, the protagonist realizes it's a bit too late to react, so he has to dodge before getting hit, only then drawing his sword to counterattack. His strategy works and Jiraten is thrown far away, his face frozen in shock. A bit tired, the boy says he did it, revealing that the strength, vitality, and dexterity from his gear let him move however he wants, allowing him to launch a higher-level monster into the air, which means that in his current state, victory is guaranteed. Getting back on his feet, the skeleton says his body may be cursed, but he never thought he'd be knocked down by a rookie, so he'll have to completely annihilate Kiho in order to be freed. Charging into another attack, our boy says the skull can talk all he wants. Activating his power, Jiraten says it's time to show the real difference in class between them. Moses' eyes shut tight from the brightness, as his opponent summons his sword named Sharma, which appears amid blue lightning, also boosting his level to 35. With a single attack, the great skeleton strikes the boy straight in the stomach, who screams as his strawberry juice pours through the armor. Turning around, the monster prepares to strike again, proving he was dead serious when he promised to wipe the boy from existence. Kiho is hit again, but this time in the back, and he's sent flying, tumbling across the ground over and over, until he finally crashes into a wall. Jiraten says it's a shame he couldn't split him in half due to his cursed body, but now that the boy's attacks are useless, he can just end the battle. In intense pain, Mose thinks that if he hadn't bought new equipment, he would have died at least 20 times by now. However, since he's in better shape than before, with 300 HP and more than 100 HP regeneration per second, he can fully heal in just 3 seconds. Smiling, he says he never imagined that a necklace he got thanks to his hyper luck would make such a difference. The skeleton asks how the boy can still stand, and he replies that this is his golden opportunity to finish him and ease his resentment for the villagers who lost their lives unjustly. Raising his sword, Jiraten says he's nothing but an insolent brat, and attacks again, forcing Kiho to crouch and block the strike with his weapon. Struggling hard, our boy says his opponent's strength is insane. Even so, he holds firm, choosing to dodge out from under the massive sword and save his own skin in a rapid exchange. Jumping into the air, ready to deliver a mid-air strike, he says he'll wait for an opening, landing a hit on the creature's arm. Seeing his attack go through the armor, Kiho decides to use the momentum to chain multiple blows. Still refusing to surrender even while wounded, Jiraten gets ready to attack again, aiming his sword right at the boy's head. But Kiho just looks up coldly, since he knows the skeleton's arm won't hold up to finish the strike. Taking the chance, our boy charges in shouting, and this time slashes at his opponent's legs, bringing him crashing down to the ground. Aiming his sword at the monster's terrifying face, the protagonist declares the fight is over. In disbelief, the skeleton asks what he is, and whether he received Belika's blessing or belongs to the lineage of Benandoru, the one who opened the chest of death. Confused, Mose asks what the creature is talking about, then says he's nothing more than a filthy murderer who destroyed the honor of his own empire. Shocked, Jiraten asks how he dares say that when he's just a rookie who doesn't even understand a soldier's mindset. Irritated, our boy asks if attacking a village and massacring all of its people counts as a soldier's mindset. Enraged, the skeleton reveals they had no choice because they were starving, since during the war his army received no decent support, so they decided to ask the village they were protecting for help, but were treated like villains, to the point of being driven out with no thanks at all for the protection they provided. As if that wasn't enough, the village declared war on the Imperial Army. Kiho asks if that was the pathetic reason they wiped everyone out. Smiling, Jiraten says yes, and if it weren't for the shaman, it would have stayed only in his and his soldiers' memories, as just a good moment. Still holding his sword, our boy says he understands a soldier's mindset much better than he does, because he served in the military for 2 years, and knows that soldiers swear loyalty to the nation and to the people. That's the motto of the Republic of Korea's army, putting an end to everything, he strikes a fatal blow to the skeleton, who literally loses his head. Satisfied, Mose turns his back to leave. The monster twitches slightly, disturbed by the soldier's creed being recited. Suddenly, a message pops up on his panel, informing him that he leveled up, not once, but 6 times in a row, and also unlocked the achievement called He Who Received the 11 Swords, which increases all his stats by 2. Mouth wide open, the young man wonders if he's really reading that right. But then something else grabs his attention. Turning to look, the boy realizes that Giratin's core is floating right in front of him, and it looks quite different from any he's seen before. Excited, he decides to open the glowing pink orb, causing a light so bright it floods the whole area. So intense he has to squint a little. We see many items drop from the core, including gold coins, jewels, and a giant axe. Grinning from ear to ear, Mose says he better get everything into his inventory as fast as possible. But before he can finish doing that, something else pulls his focus. It's the massive, glowing blue sword that once belonged to Giratin. As he approaches, our boy's eyes sparkle, but then a message appears, making him scream. We discover that the sword Sharma is a unique class item created by Lavaver, and it possesses the engraving ability. Kiho stopped reading the description the moment he saw the word unique, because he was completely shocked by the information, since he didn't even know that a rank higher than rare actually existed, which means that he probably owns the only item of such a level, just like he's also the only one to own a rare ranked item. To his surprise, the sword begins to emit smoke right in front of his eyes, revealing that it was actually absorbed by his own body, which now possesses the engraved summon ability, allowing the sword to appear whenever he wishes. Happy, Mose thinks that this is his very first skill, deciding it's time to test it out. When he says the name Sharma, a pentagram glowing with blue light appears beneath his feet, and the sword materializes right at the center. Holding the new weapon, Kiho appears completely mesmerized, revealing that even though the sword is a bit hard to grip, it has just the right weight for support. Now his greatest desire is to use it in a real battle. Suddenly, his foot steps on something. Kneeling down, the boy picks up an unknown item, the Ring of the Corrupted Swordsman seal, Giratin, also rank unique. We discover, along with Kiho, that if specific conditions are met, a secret quest will be triggered. Not wanting to know too much about what that means, the boy decides to grab everything he can, getting excited just thinking how much the items might be worth in gold coins. Suddenly, a light blinds his eyes, but it's just daylight, signaling that morning has come. The protagonist then decides he'll sell the items in the nearest village. Arriving at Toiko, the city of arts, he thinks he can finally sustain himself for quite a while. We hear someone yelling, asking what that is on the screen. It's a guy shocked to see the items listed for sale in the auction house. Another young man approaches and asks if that thing on the screen is a skill book. Both are then stunned to find out that an enormous number of items is being sold by a single person, whose in-game nickname is Mose. With eyes wide, the townspeople ask if he's the same person from the troll subjugation incident. We're taken to the Toiko branch of the Arantes Central Trade Committee, where our boy stands, jaw-dropped, staring at an absurd amount of gold in front of him. One of the auction house representatives tells him that the total value of the items he sold came out to 8,726,000 gold coins. In disbelief, he asks the little green creature to repeat the amount 2 more times, and it smiles and confirms it. Kiho collapses to the floor from sheer shock, revealing that he's more stunned than happy since he just made $80,000 from completing a single dungeon. Pointing at some coins that aren't gold, he asks what they are. Explaining, the little man says those are Ormachan tokens, each worth more than 1,000 gold coins, information that nearly makes Mose's eyes pop out of his skull. We learn that the tokens are a magical rank item, containing a small amount of Orma Spiral Aura. Holding one of the coins, our boy reveals his complete ignorance about the item. Interrupting his daydream, the vendor says he better be careful for a while, since everyone in the city is trying to figure out who Mose really is. On top of that, there's a group called the Dark Guild that kills and robs people without hesitation. It's already night outside and people are still talking about our boy and the massive fortune he must have earned, stating that if they run into him, they'll rob him without mercy. Hidden under a cloak, Kiho realizes the situation is more serious than he imagined and that he'll need more than just clothes to protect himself. Suddenly, something clicks inside his head. When the day breaks, he heads to a blacksmith, looking for armor that covers his whole body and offers real protection. The man in front of him says full plate armor is pretty expensive. Unbothered, the boy asks the man to just show him what he's got. Pulling out a gleaming suit of armor from under the counter, the man smiles excitedly. Grabbing the helmet, the boy concludes that it'd be hard for anyone to recognize him. Deciding to ask the price right away, the man says he crafted that piece during the Forge Master King's challenge back in his day, so he'll only sell it for 200 gold coins. Then adds that he knows it's expensive, but it's the best work of his life. His speech is cut short when the boy places a box full of coins right in front of him, then asks him to hand over the full set of armor. Later, we see a green-eyed elf walking through the city. The boy asks if she's on a new mission, revealing that her name is Kia. It's Varen, who says he can help her if she wants. Walking away, the young woman says she doesn't need dead weight who takes ages to finish a mission. Mocking her, the boy asks why the elf is playing hard to get if she's nothing but a mutt. Hearing that enrages Kid, who lunges at him with her sword. Cornering the man, she holds her blade up. Trying to calm things down, Varen says she wouldn't want to hurt a fellow adventurer who's also on a mission. Walking off, the girl says he'll have to be faster next time. She then picks up a small stone and throws it to the ground. After whispering something, it opens a portal, which begins to close the moment she steps through it. Smiling, the man says she's nothing but an insolent mutt, then decides to return to his mission, which is to find the Star of Poldrun currently hanging around Kiho's neck. Far from there, somewhere else, we see a wagon where the driver thanks someone for saving him. Wearing the armor, Kiho says the man doesn't need to thank him. Offering a ride is more than enough. We find out the man was merely taken out by a monster, only to be saved by our boy. Curious, he asks if the young man is a student. Most says yes, and that he started making money to pay tuition. Friendly, the man says the boy's parents must be proud of him, then changes the subject. The protagonist asks how the man ended up there. He replies that he needed money, so he decided to try the game since he heard it was good. Then turning, he asks where the boy is headed. Our boy says he'll decide once he reaches Silver Valley, and the man says he'll take him wherever he wants, telling Kiho not to worry about being a burden since he's enjoying having a bodyguard. Upon arriving in the city, the boy says in that case, he'll catch him later. The man says he'll be at the fountain, right in the city center. A message appears on Moses' panel, warning him that his armor needs repairs. With no better option, he decides to handle that first, heading straight to a blacksmith's shop, or rather, a blacksmith woman's. While he waits, the boy thinks how glad he is he got Duradin's seal. His only concern now is finding out the specific conditions to activate the secret mission, since he's been searching but feels like he's hit a dead end. With his armor repaired, Kiho decides to meet up with the old man again to go to the next stop, but he freezes when he sees a small crowd gathering. We see the poor old man who gave him a ride lying on the ground being beaten by a red-haired guy who says he hates being kept waiting, and asks if the man thinks the Valley clan is made up of cowards. Shocked, the other people can't believe what they're seeing. Unbothered, the red-haired guy says this will be the old man's last day alive. But before he can land a blow, a hand grabs his wrist. Looking to the side, he asks the armored person what the hell they think they're doing. Crushing the boy's wrist, Mose asks if he seriously thinks being late is a good reason to beat someone. Yanking his hand back in fury, the guy asks if he even knows who he's talking to, then declares that in Valley territory, everyone must obey him and never make him angry. Our boy asks again if that's a real reason to beat someone. Acting rashly, the guy lunges to throw a punch, saying that if he doesn't like it, tough luck. To his surprise, the protagonist dodges effortlessly, counterattacks in a flash, saying this is called self-defense. The guy is sent flying, crashing hard into the wall of a house. In disbelief, the bystanders ask if he's okay. Kiho approaches the man who had been getting beaten to help him up. Mouths open, people start asking how he had the guts to strike the Valley clan heir. Suddenly, a furious voice yells, calling Mose a bastard. It's Morag Valley, father of the red-haired boy, who orders his guard to take out the protagonist for messing with his son. Without hesitation, Python draws his sword and asks how Kiho dares lay a hand on the young master, saying that now he'll have to destroy him in the name of the Knights of Silver Valley. Our boy decides to summon Sharma, which instantly appears in his hand, blocking his opponent's strike. Shocked, the man asks what that is. But before he can get an answer, he's also thrown back violently, landing right where the Hera Valley is. Both end up on the ground seriously injured. Surprised, Mork shouts for Python, ordering him to get up immediately if he still wants to be a knight. Our boy points his sword at him and says it's time for round 2. Meanwhile, the townspeople wonder if the armor the boy is wearing belongs to the Order of the 14 Holy Knights. The crowd starts to gather, happy to think that someone has finally come to investigate what's been happening in the city, since Morik has been stealing half of their profits as taxes, executing those who don't pay. Confused, Mose thinks he doesn't even know who the 14 Knights are, but decides to play along to help. Turning to the man, he asks if everything he just heard is true. Sweating nervously, the man says the taxes were part of a preparation plan in case of a food crisis. Kiho then says that, in that case, they can head to the mansion and search the place. Falling to his knees, the man starts begging for forgiveness for the serious crime he committed. Our boy accepts and says it's fine. As long as he returns all the money he took, the charges will be dropped. Morik agrees, and the entire crowd starts applauding our boy, increasing his fame by 2,874, and we discover this was also a secret quest. And now he needs to go to Falub, a city on the continental border, to complete the next one. Smiling, the boy admits he didn't see that coming. Watching from a distance, someone says it's been a long time since they've seen an engraved sword. From atop a mountain, another person asks Higher if he's going to punish the boy for pretending to be one of the 14 knights. In response, he asks if his companion forgot that the Oracle of God said adventurers have made things better. And as they can see, now they have less to do thanks to the boy in armor. Agreeing, the man in the white hood asks what kind of adventurer the protagonist is. The other hooded person then says he's not sure, but it seems like he might be that Mose from the rumors. His companion then says that, in that case, they should keep an eye on the boy for a while. Kiho arrives in the border city called Falup and heads straight to the class agency. Leaving the place, he throws himself on the ground, frustrated by not finding any leads, then wonders how many days have already passed. We learn a bit about the secret class, where people who possess it have a strength or knowledge that only a few can obtain, so rare that there's barely any information available. Thinking to himself, the protagonist says that at least he made some progress by getting info from the guild, but maybe now he needs to search the whole city to find what he's looking for. Suddenly, something catches his attention. Two elves walking right in front of him, creatures he never expected to find there. Suddenly, a man running bumps into Mose, almost knocking him down even though he was at fault. The man tells him to watch where he's going. Annoyed, the boy asks why the guy is so mad when it was clearly his fault, then yells that he hopes the man steps in feces. Out of nowhere, a huge explosion occurs, scaring everyone, including our boy, who realizes something very wrong just happened. We see the man who had been running now lying on the ground, coughing, lamenting that he dropped his money. Another person arrives and steps on the coin bag, calling him a damn little thief. It's Varen, who furiously asks how the man dared to trick him and try to get away. The guy's strength impresses Mose, but it's the ring on his finger that grabs even more attention. Enraged, the thief pulls a hidden knife, determined to kill the man who stopped him from fleeing. A bright flash bursts forth, and we see that it was Varen who obliterated the man with his large, gleaming sword. Everyone is horrified by the scene. As the boy says, it was all a waste of time. Shocked, Kiho says he couldn't even see the guy's movements, realizing he needs to find out who the hell this guy is. A message appears saying he completed another secret quest and now has a lead to a rare class. Confused, our boy wonders if he read that correctly, but his thoughts are interrupted by another message saying that now he must speak with the man in the black cloak, who by now is already leaving the scene. Later, as night falls, we see Varen walking through a dark alley, with Mose following him very stealthily. Thinking to himself, the boy says he has no more doubts that the ring on the young man's finger is the same as Jeratin's seal, which reminds him of when the skeleton revealed he used to be a swordsman. Smiling under his armor, our boy thinks he really is one lucky guy. However, the boy he was following suddenly disappears, leaving him completely confused. Varen appears behind Mose, a dark look on his face. He grabs the boy by the neck with one arm and drags him back into the alley, throwing him to the ground right after, with his sword pinning the protagonist down. The boy asks who he is and why he's following him, and where he got the shiny necklace he's wearing, warning that Kiho has one chance to tell the truth. Cornered, our boy says he got the item from a gacha. Varen attacks, taking 5% of his health, then asks if Mose thinks he's joking. On the ground, the boy insists it's true, saying he bought 2 ruined fragments from an old man in the village of Linderoak. The cloaked guy grabs the young man's armor. While asking what the old man looked like, our boy says he had white hair and wore a cape. Realizing everything, Varen lets go of Kiho with force, quietly muttering that all this time the man was in Linderoak. Getting back on his feet, fully healed, our boy asks who the old man really is. The other replies that he's an A-class special criminal, known as Lero the Gambler. Hearing that leaves Mose quite shocked. Varen then reveals he was assigned to find the man who knows about the disappearance of the Landris cavalry. Seeing that our boy has no idea what he's talking about, the man calls him an ignorant idiot, then explains that he's investigating the incident that caused the Landris cavalry to vanish, leaving only ruins behind. Kiho then finds out that the necklace he's been wearing all this time belonged to Palarun, the executive commander of the cavalry. Looking at the glowing gem, he thinks he always thought the item was amazing, but he never imagined something like this. Varen then says that, noticing he has no more injuries, the necklace must be real, and attacking Mose declares it's time to take it for himself. With his armor scratched, the protagonist asks what the guy is doing. The other responds that since Palarun is no longer around, all he needs to do is finish off the boy to take the item, so he should be a good boy and just accept his fate. In shock, Kiho asks if the guy had planned to kill him from the start. Confirming, the man says dead men don't tell tales. Grabbing Sharma, the protagonist realizes that's why his opponent revealed all that info so easily. His thoughts slow him down, and he takes another hit that drops his HP below 10%. Varen then demands that the boy hand over the necklace, but instead, he gets a surprise, because Mose, still intact, is already getting back up completely healed. Annoyed, the guy asks if he's immortal. Appearing behind the protagonist, he tells him to say his last words, since he'll just keep killing him every time they meet. Dying from the pain, Kiho thinks he just has to endure for 3 more seconds. But Varen shows up again, asking if the boy really thought he'd just sit and wait for his recovery. With another hit, the protagonist's HP drops to below 3%. His consciousness begins to fade. Opening his eyes, he sees someone saying that a swordsman buries his convictions in his sword and devotes his life to it, a truth he should have reminded the boy of, since this is a top-tier secret mission. We discover that the mysterious person saved our boy from death, and is now fighting Varen, saying he's been blinded by greed and turned into a dog, so he must be eliminated for being a traitor. Stammering, the guy says his master misunderstood the situation, and that he just needs one more chance to prove his loyalty. Robin executes the guy without mercy, saying he can explain himself to the devil. Shocked, Kiho wonders if the man really finished off the young guy that easily. But he steps in front of him, declaring that now it's his turn, that he can't be allowed to leave alive now that he knows too much. Terrified, our boy thinks that his last opponent was already no pushover, and now he has to face someone on a completely different level. Standing up, he remembers that he promised to bet everything he had on the circuit, surprising Roby with his attitude while thinking he can't miss the chance to reach the secret class, even if he dies and receives a penalty. Intrigued, the man asks if he really wants to fight, even knowing the huge difference in their abilities. Mose replies that even if he survives, Roby will keep chasing him, so he'll give it his all. The man then thinks that's an incredible mindset for someone who's scared shitless, someone very rare even among swordsmen. Suddenly, the ring on the boy's finger catches his attention, forcing him to ask out loud if that's the seal of the swordsman. We see that, as he asks, the man also advances toward Kiho, who ends up revealing where he got the ring. Shocked, Roby asks if he's really talking about Jiratin, and he confirms that yes, he is. They stare at each other for a few seconds. Letting the boy fall to the ground, the man says it's impossible to believe he defeated Jiratin, but he felt truth in the story. Getting back up, Mose asks if Jiratin was also a swordsman. The man says yes, and that hundreds of years ago, he was the two-faced traitor who abandoned the swordsman and joined the Imperial Army. Back then, since the swordsman had only just emerged, no one could stand against the army. Kiho realizes that's why the skeleton had the ring. He then apologizes for taking away Roby's chance at revenge. The man doesn't mind and states that now the boy only has two options: to die painfully every time he revives or fill Varen's vacant spot and join the swordsman. Without hesitation, our boy says he wants to join the group, leaving the man surprised by such a quick decision. Even so, Roby asks if he's sure about what he just said, then agrees, saying he's not even sure the kid can really become a swordsman. Out of nowhere, the man punches Mose in the face. Without a helmet, you can only wonder why he got hit. As he slowly passes out, Roby grins and welcomes him, calling him a crap rookie. Meanwhile, in the training room known as Sanctuary, our heroes prepare for a duel. Both Kiho and the young woman stare each other down before the real fun begins. At that moment, the boy rushes toward the swordswoman, launching his attack. The pair's wooden swords clash in the air, but the girl's strength seems to leave our protagonist a bit embarrassed. With a charming smile, the young woman faces him with a playful jab. Attacking again and again, Kiho tries to defend himself at all costs. Realizing how good the girl is, the elf shouts that she can track the protagonist's blade. Lee understands her skills are far superior, thinking he couldn't expect anything less from the master's student. But something catches the young woman's attention, and with her green eyes, she tries to make sense of what's going on. We see that Lee seems to have found some kind of opening and takes the chance to strike. However, his strategy doesn't work, and he ends up getting hit. Thrown to the ground, the boy opens one eye and sees a hand reaching out toward him. It's Kiho, who smiles and says the boy isn't bad, he just has a long road ahead. With a slight smile of relief, the warrior tries to come up with a reply for the girl. We see a bond beginning to form between the two, and Lee says he'll win next time. Far from there, we notice some sort of interesting conversation taking place. It's our protagonist on the phone with his mother, who seems to have found his precious dollars. A bit of an argument breaks out as the woman thinks all that money came from shady activities like theft. At that moment, the boy realizes he's super late for something and decides to just end the call. Saying goodbye to his mom, the guy slams the alarm clock, which wouldn't stop ringing. Letting out a soft sigh, our protagonist seems relieved, possibly related to his mom's nagging. We're taken to a few moments earlier, and we find out the place where Lee woke up was the hideout of an organization that serves the god of blades. Robin, the guy who brought him there, introduced himself as one of the 10 masters of that mercenary group. And after that, he asked the young man if he wished to become a swordsman of that kingdom. Accepting without a second thought, the protagonist decides to join the crew. However, it didn't take long for Lee to bitterly regret his decision. While training, he began to realize that it was far more exhausting than it had been presented to him. His master kept making violent promises, and each day the place demanded even more from him during training. That intense training continued until the young man began to wonder if it was really worth it to train the way the elite did. But he grew more and more tired as he kept taking blows from the leader who had summoned him for the mission. The only reason Lee managed to endure was Kia's smile. Smiling at the girl, he reveals he's happy to have finally been called for an official mission. Ki then says it's fine to be excited, but he has to be extremely careful not to let that information leak. The two say their goodbyes and agree to meet at the sanctuary another time. Smiling, Lee watches his friend walk away. And determined to complete his mission, he begins to wonder if he might finally get to go to Asparagon. Meanwhile, in the city, we see a beautiful cathedral, and we learn that Lee managed to become a very successful swordsman. As proof of his performance, the young man received a ring called the Swordsman's Seal, which increases his attack power. The protagonist then reveals that to continue his mission in the city, he had to go to Asparagon. Since the ships that travel to the place depart from that city, he ended up realizing the number of players had increased. Looking at the armor of two young men, he thinks everything looks really fancy, And while walking through the city, he began to overhear conversations about accessory sales and wild achievements. His thoughts drift back to the past, when all the players hunted slimes to get magic items. Suddenly, someone calling for help catches our boy's attention. It's a desperate player saying everything he earned from the hunt in Valenco was stolen. Everyone begins to comment on what the #1 guild has been doing with those lands. Trying to gather information, our boy finds himself standing still, listening carefully to every whisper. Far away, on some isolated island, we see something seems to be happening. It's the members of the #1 guild blocking other players from entering a cave, while some thugs threaten the more defenseless players. The young man who was calling for help earlier appears. The bald man then starts negotiating, asking if the boy has any idea how much the product he scratched is worth. But suddenly, Lee appears to solve the situation and terrifies the bald brute. With all this sweetness, the protagonist tries to reason with the bad guys, saying it's a public place and everyone can play freely. But the thug squad had no interest in arguments and soon started threatening our warrior. Already knowing how to deal with that kind of people, Kiho tries to steer the situation in his favor and starts dropping some fancy words. Then he switches to more aggressive language in an attempt to drive those cowards away. But at that moment, the bald guy decides to start a physical fight. Unfortunately for him, before he could finish his attack, our swordsman immediately strikes without hesitation. Seeing their leader flying through the air, the guy next to him asks who the protagonist is. And before hearing an answer, he gives the command for the other bandits to launch a full-on attack against the outsider. Thinking fast, Lee concludes there's no need to bring out Sharma to deal with that trash, choosing to defend himself using only his fists. Taking advantage of the fact that his training was up to date, Lee quickly began applying everything he had practiced over the past few months, taking down the guild members one by one. Shocked, those still standing begin to wonder who that bastard is. Lifting a guy off the ground, the protagonist shows he heard what the men were saying. Then looking back, he declares that he's just a player who came to the hunting grounds to hunt, starting a real intense brawl. At that moment, someone unfamiliar appears and asks what's going on. It's Suksa-nim, the execution captain of the #1 guild. All the goons rejoice at the man's arrival, putting all their hopes in his skills. But before any sort of confrontation begins, everyone realizes something isn't going as planned, because the fighter is wearing an emblem that only players above 9,000 have. At that moment, Lee notices that everyone is trembling in fear, and it's time to take some kind of action. We discover that while our hero was training, some things had changed in the circuit, specifically regarding how players were ranked, since before to get good rank, one had to be famous or something like that. However, a certain information guild started bending those kinds of rules, making things confusing. Grinding his teeth, the strong, long-haired warrior shows he's furious. And as he gets ready to attack, he makes sure to remind everyone that the guild needs to rank up urgently. Letting out a loud battle cry along with the other warriors, he threatens to call the guards for disturbing the game's order, saying that first he needs to take care of that outsider who showed up just to stir up trouble. But our hero can't stay quiet in the face of such an insult, and before the guy even finishes talking, he charges in and throws him far. Conjuring his power, Lee starts mocking everyone in the guild, until this sword appears and he gets ready to settle the matter his own way. He then states that he wants everyone to watch closely as the guild explodes into pieces. A blinding light floods the entire space, and intense blue rays shoot through the air, leaving everyone stunned. Lee takes the chance to dash in, hitting his distracted enemies with full force. They couldn't even understand what had just happened. From a distance, our boy spots a pair of slackers, showing that they'll be the next to taste the edge of his blazing sword. However, they weren't that dumb, and upon realizing how serious the situation was, they quickly team up and flee the scene, leaving the protagonist seemingly alone. Immediately, a message pops up for him informing that the reserve ship is about to depart. At that moment, he remembers that before all this chaos, he had a mission to complete. Giving a slight smile to the boy who got his stuff back, our hero decides it's time to leave. Far from there, sometime later, we see the Velus Dawn ship soaring over the city skies at high speed. Looking down from above, our guy is amazed by how beautiful the view is, unaware that someone is approaching. The man then asks if Lee is the one who came for the mission. That's when our hero notices that the man also has a ring on his finger. Saluting respectfully, the protagonist shows deep admiration for the organization and its mission. "Let truth be questioned only by the blade," replies the man politely and kindly to the outsider. However, Kiho notices something odd about the man's aura. He instantly activates the insight skill, which allows him to see people's names and levels. Looking carefully, the boy realizes that warrior is level 91, while the man stands calmly with a friendly smile, then says he didn't expect to find a swordsman around here. Lee introduces himself as Mose, and the stranger says his name is Kaloi, a swordsman from the city of Lozven. Carefully analyzing everything that's happened lately, the level 91 swordsman says something must have happened in the northern villages, because there's no other reason for 5 big shots to be on that ship. Lee doesn't really get where the conversation is going, and the man invites him to follow. A beautiful gate appears in front of the 2 swordsmen, and Mose seems curious to know where it leads. Suddenly, before his eyes can adjust, the gate opens, revealing a radiant light bright enough to blind. As the protagonist enters the room, he's completely awestruck. to the point of losing track of direction. Upon arriving at the intended spot, the boy freezes for a few seconds after seeing something. Kaloi points to a table with 5 people who apparently are the strongest beings on the entire continent, leaving Mose completely shocked. One of the mercenaries aggressively asks if the 2 boys or the kids will join the team of winners for the mission. Yvonne, a beautiful woman, asks if the 2 of them will be alright since they look weak. Meanwhile, one of the holy knights smiles and says that one of them may not look it, but is an adventurer blessed with immortality. At that moment, Lee is left speechless, not knowing he was that well known. Slamming the table, someone says they heard the young man managed to become a true swordsman. It's Gon, the sword master of Tigris. However, our warrior can only think about the fact that this master is level 244. We learn that swords have power, and becoming a sword master is the ultimate goal of all swordsmen. That's why the man is considered legendary. Knowing he's among the best of the best, Lee immediately bows and introduces himself as Mose. The master then asks about the other young man with him, and he quickly introduces himself as well. But the sword master gives him a threatening glare. Noticing a moment of silence, Lee feels a bit awkward, but stays alert. For a few more seconds, the master deliberately keeps his lips steeled and says nothing, then suddenly bursts into loud laughter upon realizing those young ones were not cowards at all. At that moment, our warrior acquires a new skill for having met the sword master, gaining a +2 attribute, which makes him very happy. He then reveals that he now really wants to know how strong those 5 standing in front of him are, and that he's not surprised the mission's difficulty is actually high, since such amazing people are participating. Out of nowhere, an alert sounds, catching everyone off guard. The voice of the ship's captain comes on, informing them that in just a few moments they'll be arriving at the northern snow wall, and that even though it might seem like the first journey is coming to an end, this is only the beginning of a dreadful challenge. It's time for the group to discuss the details of the upcoming secret mission. Upon hearing the sword master calling everyone, Lee simply nods. Then he realizes that the mission level has changed and the combat is now ranked SS. Meanwhile, north of Langness, we see an imposing snow wall rising over the ice, and we find out that our hero wasn't the only one surprised by the mission's level increase. Holding a paper, the sword master says that if things keep going this way, the mission might be cancelled quickly. Unbothered, one of the warriors says that might actually be for the best, since if a rookie is sent there, he might never return alive. Taking advantage of the confusion, the woman asks what caused the increase in the mission's difficulty. Grabbing the document, the blonde knight tries to carefully read the part that mentions this unexpected change, revealing that it all happened because the source of the supernatural phenomenon was discovered. Since he'd never heard of this before, Lee wonders what that actually means. Explaining, the blonde guy says that on the eastern continent, the level shifts are being caused by a lightning bolt. The long-haired warrior then says it's a red lightning, so there must definitely be some creature involved. Joining in, the Master of Swords says it can only be the dreadful creature Garnest that's causing such great imbalance. The blonde knight then tries to explain that not even they know how the monster got there. We find out that the terrible creature seems to have come from the unknown continent and made its home precisely in those icy regions. Everyone starts looking at the blonde guy, even Lee and Kalor, hoping to understand what's really going on. Breaking the silence, the barbarian asks about the reward. Smiling, the knight says that 50 magic coins will be deposited in the account of whoever defeats the beast. The woman then says she needs something other than that promised money, getting the right to all the food in the Asparagan market immediately. The knight then says that Gon can also ask for something if he wants, but he doesn't know what he could offer since the master already has nearly everything. The man then says he doesn't need any kind of reward. His only condition for joining the challenge is to have the 2 rookies on his team. After the invitation, a message appears for Lee. Meanwhile, snow continues to fall over the fortresses of Langeru. We find out that there is a large inn there called Snow-Lying Dragon. A member of the Order of Sacred Knights appears and greets the saviors in the name of Bellica and Velus. Everyone is increasingly delighted with the warm welcome from the man, who clearly was very powerful, as we see that his level above his head is 172. Next, they are taken to a place with a table, where the truly important matters will be explained. That barbarian doesn't have much time for small talk and immediately asks what the current situation is. According to the Sacred Knight, that red lightning has begun to fade. The master then says that now would be a great opportunity to attack. Excited, the barbarian says that in that case, he'll be right on the front line to attack more effectively. Agreeing, the leader says he and the rookie swordsman will attack from the rear. But that sounds a bit strange to Lee, who seems uneasy knowing he'll be fighting from the back. The rest seem ready for whatever comes their way. The Sacred Knight is happy with their enthusiasm and says he'll prepare a wonderful spell to help. Standing up, the Sword Master says that everyone there must follow the plan. Far from there, we see it's extremely cold as snow begins to fall in a space already completely covered in white. The storm ends up greatly hindering our warrior's vision, who continues trying to walk. Looking at the sky, he realizes that the snow won't stop falling on his head anytime soon. However, contrary to what they said, a terrible red lightning strikes the ground. They didn't know exactly what was happening, but they quickly spotted the mark on the ground after the lightning strike. Confused, Lee wonders if that happened because the terrible dragon flapped its wings. Seeing that his friend was falling behind, Kalor shouts for Mose to start walking faster. Our brave team begins to take their positions, and it seems that everything is set for a grand battle. At that moment, the Holy Knight declares that since they are all together, it's time to start his magic. Lifting his staff, the powerful wizard begins casting a mighty spell that will help the team. Upon touching the snow, a loud noise fills the environment. Looking at the sky, they all notice that everything became quieter. Lee carefully observes his hands and realizes that even beneath his armor, he is still trembling. While the mage continues his spell, something catches the protagonist's attention. It is the mage, singing a beautiful hymn of love to Velus. Shaking a sacred bell, the moment grows more intense for both priests. It seems that finally something starts happening with our champions, who become increasingly happy and surprised by the holy magic. New abilities begin to manifest before them, all in favor of the moment they are living, leaving everyone quite surprised and excited. Thinking to himself, Lee says that the new ability is at its peak, given the amount of power that entered his body. However, before they could continue with that magical and special moment, a loud crash occurs. With wide eyes, Lee seems to quickly understand what that was. While drawing his sword, the master says that indeed that bastard decided to appear there on his own, then ordering everyone to prepare. Placing his powerful shield on the ice, our barbarian steps forward, as previously agreed. Meanwhile, our warrior prepares her abilities to face the terrible beast approaching the location. Looking intently at the sky, the blonde knight tries to understand what is coming closer. Lee doesn't let anyone notice, but reveals in his thoughts that he is worried about where the creature will appear, soon discovering that the monster chose a spot right behind him. The dragon's wing beat sends snow flying in all directions. Turning around, Lee mentally prepares to face whatever comes, then realizing that a terribly dangerous creature stands before him. Showing its sharp fangs, the dragon opens its mouth and we can see a light in the back of its throat. Without hesitation, the creature lets out a mighty roar. Lee was so scared by what he saw that it felt like his legs stopped working. Raising its long, scaly neck, the dragon shows that it's about to attack, leaving Lee not only paralyzed but also cornered. Flames begin pouring from the animal's mouth, coming straight toward the protagonist, who tries to protect himself with his arms. By luck at that moment, the barbarian steps in front of him and manages to control the dragon's fire with his shield. Furious with the young man's performance in that battle, he orders him to quickly retreat to the backline. A rope is thrown to try to silence the beast's mouth. Yvonne yells at the creature, ordering it to quiet down a bit. Everyone else cheers the warrior's clever move as she had the courage to face that beast. Now it's the master's and the blonde knight's turn to do their part. They combine their attacks, causing flashes of light to appear everywhere. At that moment, the dragon realizes it's not dealing with ordinary players, but with a very powerful league. However, the leader states that the creature also has a lot of skill, and that those attacks were only buying time. Happy with what he saw, Lee says that his team was brilliant and the strongest among the strong. Suddenly, the dragon manages to break free from the ropes. The sword master then asks everyone to prepare. Placing the shield in front of him, our barbarian is ready for the moment when the dragon spits out its flames, preparing to send the attack straight back to whoever launched it. After that, a huge explosion occurs, leaving the shield man tense with how the situation unfolds. Around him, everyone is ready to fight. Spreading a wave of forgiveness and love, our mage decides to cast a powerful force capable of facing the beast, along with a green-eyed young man, causing the winged serpent to feel what was truly happening. At that moment, a special ability is activated and they have 7,000 seconds to attack the now weakened enemy. Our barbarian is very happy, realizing that now he might actually have a way out. More fiery bolts shoot from the beast's mouth, trying in every possible way to destroy the group. However, all of its magic is turning against itself, since the barbarian's shield keeps reflecting it. The dragon then shows signs of rage. Out of nowhere, the barbarian's strength seems to increase, and Lee notices when this happens. He recalls a moment when something very similar occurred some time ago. The creature spreads its wings and charges for another attack. But the young warriors quickly realize what strategy the beast is using. As the dreadful dragon seems to close in, someone causes thorny plants to rise from the ground. They end up wrapping around the creature. The one responsible is our heroine, who grows more eager to defeat this challenge and finally eat to her heart's content. However, she realizes she won't last much longer. The blonde knight activates his ability, leaving the protagonist completely dazzled. Running forward, Kaloi tells Mose that this is the perfect time to join in on the attack. Our two warriors leap toward the beast with great effort and strength. The dragon quickly notices people closing in and decides to strike before the pair gets in closer. Both young men are launched away with force. But despite the painful fall, it's not enough to break our heroes, who remain strong and determined to achieve their goal. Lee thinks that, apparently, that creature knew perfectly well they were going to jump. Meanwhile, the terrible dragon continues to stare him down with those devouring eyes. Suddenly, the boy hears a chuckle in the background and becomes confused. It's the sword master who steps forward, ready to show how it's really done. Swinging his magic sword from side to side, the older man tries to teach how true fighting is done, while his power and life force continue to grow without pause. Once he feels fully ready, He charges in, stating that this is the kind of strength the boys must one day achieve. A terrible light erupts and we see that the dragon is wounded. More than that, it begins to writhe as that foul liquid starts pouring from his body. Twitching in pain, the beast now truly seems to have been struck hard. Smiling, Lee says it's incredible how the man's levels surpass Garnus. We find out that the technique managed to evolve the master's strength even further, now reaching 388 power. It's as if the boy is getting to witness the real abilities he'll need as a true swordsman. The sword master then says it's time for everyone to attack. Shouting to each other, the swordsman duo runs toward the beast, which did not expect an immediate attack from all three. Knowing exactly how this works, Lee thinks he can't let the fight end without taking action, and immediately activates his power, to the master's surprise, who clearly didn't expect that. He then declares that apparently a man with a brilliant future has just joined the band of superpowered warriors. With a brave shout, Li charges at the creature. Unleashing all his fury on the dragon, he strikes the beast with his powerful magical spear, radiating a blinding blue light. Immediately, the creature lets out a loud growl and decides to strike back, putting everyone's lives at risk for the sake of survival. Leaping forward, the beast tries to get revenge on Lee, who once again finds himself frozen, unable to do much. Ramising, our hero, tries to think of a way to save himself, but then hears his master say that right now he won't need to use all his strength. After all, he's still just a boy. Immediately, the master raises his fierce sword and charges at the beast. Unleashing a dreadful blow, our master makes sure to apply supreme force against the creature. We see, in that moment, the damned winged serpent now pouring out all its strawberry-colored liquid as if it were endless. As the creature suffers under the sword, our hero realizes that this man is truly worthy of admiration. Seeing that he managed to wound the serpent's head, the master says that should be enough to contain the monster. Looking up, our comrades realize there are still brave warriors among the allied group. Asking everyone to step back, our angelic Meg prepares to cast one more spell. Descending from the heavens like a furious thunderbolt, the guardian helps shake the dragon's very foundations. Immediately asking forgiveness from all celestial creation, the barbarian also shouts for the other allies to flee behind his magical and powerful shield. Knowing that this is a necessary act to save many lives, the knight calls down a lightning bolt from the sky toward the terrible beast. Feeling the cosmic lightning touch its body, the cursed being can only scream. A grand explosion occurs and spreads infinite light throughout the area. When the light fades, everyone sees the dragon lying in the snow, too weak to rise. Looking at that scene, our hero realizes that his team has won. However, something suddenly scares him. We see that in front of them, the core of the hungry dragon has appeared, a magical and extremely powerful stone. Taking a deep breath, Lee tries to understand what will happen next. Then realizing that the others couldn't see the core because they were NPCs, he then decides to get closer to the dragon's powerful core. His eyes revealed that he was becoming increasingly nervous and confused with the direction that journey was taking. Applauding the new friend, the violet-haired woman appears, celebrating the end of that wretched mission. We find out that during the battle, our hero managed to improve even further in the game and leveled up 25 times. The barbarian begins saying goodbye to the group as he hated that very cold weather. Meanwhile, we see that Yvonne managed to call people to dismantle the dragon's remains and make good money in return. After that, she left once she was satisfied with the magical skills and items she had obtained. Our angelic little friend took the moment to say farewell and congratulate the other guardians for a wonderful battle. To the master, meeting two swordsmen with incredible talent was the true reward of that grand battle. Content with how everything turned out, the angelic Meg gives a smile of gratitude. Thinking, Lee says that it was a lot of pressure knowing that Hire actually liked him. After all the farewells, the mountain became increasingly lonely and silent. The time of truth arrived, with the master now standing before his two new assistants. Bowing before the older man, the swordsman from Losven says he is deeply honored to have been chosen by the master, just like Lee, the swordsman from Asparagan. The master then says that one day, both of their swords might become famous across the entire world, and that he will be waiting for them with open arms. With a gesture of his hand, he makes it clear that he is very excited to meet those two again in the near future. In front of the man, a bright and majestic magical portal opens, and immediately, he begins to walk into it, leaving the two young men alone. We see that Kalor also has some other very important matters to attend to. "See you around," he says, bidding farewell to the boy amid the snowy void. Watching all his friends go, the young man felt a sense of duty fulfilled. However, when he realized he was truly alone, he began to feel as if the battle had never happened. Suddenly, something catches his attention again. It was the dragon's core, and Lee then says he needs to take great care of it, then revealing that he doesn't know if it's really right to monopolize the core, while thinking that he could never waste such an opportunity. After all, to reach the truest and most powerful forces, he would need to become even stronger at that moment. It only took his small fingers to touch that sphere for a brilliant light to fill the environment. That explosion was so grand that our hero had to cover his face so he wouldn't be completely blinded. But things went in a direction he couldn't have expected. To his surprise, a beautiful full set of armor appeared before his eyes. Reaching for the sword, Lee wonders what kind of weapon it is, and upon touching the item, he felt as if a magical arc of fire had pierced through him. Immediately, the young man realized it was a legendary greatsword with unimaginable attack power. Soon after, an increasingly intense glow appeared, something he could never put into words. We discover that the legendary set named Rising Sun of Octoria was continually enhancing his abilities. Smiling, the protagonist wonders if this was some kind of prank, and so he became the first person to obtain a legendary set in the circuit. Sometime later, we see a stream on Circuit TV hosted by streamer Jiyen. The young man reveals that the Information Guild posted some kind of update last night about a true war involving newly ranked players from every continent in the world. We see that our young Lee is discovering, along with everyone else, that the new rules of the game will soon be revealed, where special missions will be given to the ranked players in the national level game and a new summoning of global players will emerge. After the young man decided to grow stronger within the game, he also started going on walks to develop his stamina, since every time he returns to reality, he feels like his head is hurting more and more. Thinking to himself, Lee says that the game he started to improve his life is beginning to look more and more like real life, the only difference being the fact that he earns a lot of money inside the game. The young man begins to wonder if he should keep seeing it only as a game. Looking around, Lee sees two children playing with an animal. Then he notices a man in a suit needing to run to deal with urgent work matters. And he also notices how couples are enjoying themselves together in that park. Lost in his thoughts, he wonders if he'd be living like a normal person if it weren't for the game. But our hero soon realizes that, in fact, he'd be living in despair and without money, so he decides to return to where he belongs. We're taken to the center of one of the busiest cities in the magical circuit of the game, and we find out that the protagonist has delivered his new armor to the blacksmith and needs to take care of a few things before reporting to the sanctuary. Seeing an empty alley, he says that no one will see him there, so he decides to open his inventory on the spot. After searching, he manages to select one of his legendary and magical items. It seems it really wasn't a dream, and that sacred sword is now in his hands ready to be used. However, the boy is immediately caught off guard by something he hadn't planned for, and he starts to feel a terrible heat in his hands. A brilliant and magical explosion occurs. Immediately, Lee is teleported to a place we can't yet identify. With a massive headache, it seems the young man has acquired a unique fencing style. His mind is filled with the necessary skills to handle such a heavy and unique weapon. Meanwhile, his hands are more and more filled with fire and power. At that moment, he hears something that leaves him frozen. Looking behind, the protagonist feels like he knows that presence. A bit farther away, someone is speaking nonsense, and he can't quite understand the gossip. We discover it's just a boy using a communication orb that allows people to talk across any distance. Remembering that it could be extremely useful, Lee wonders if he should buy that rare item. A short time later, he's already at the shop thanking the clerk for a new purchase. After leaving the place, we see that he has repaired his armor and also managed to acquire a new magical item for his collection. Now he must continue on his path and do something truly important for him to grow immediately in the game. Clicking on his teleportation item, he heads toward the magical sanctuary of Asparagan. Far from there, we see a large ship arriving in the city. A flight attendant thanks the young man for choosing them and says she will treat him like a king. Being friendly, the woman also says she'll take Lee to the White Horse, and that he only needs to follow her. As he walks through the place, our young man observes every detail. Remembering the note, he says he only received one slip, just enough to take him to the sanctuary. Suddenly, someone shows up and asks why the protagonist took so long. To our joy, it's Kiho, smiling, saying she was already tired of waiting so long. With a huge grin, the protagonist asks if she's going with him, and Kiho immediately confirms that she is, because this time, the mission will be done as a team. Far away from there, right in front of the Bing caravan, we see many people already walking back and forth. Stretching, Lee says everything seems much farther than it really should be. At that moment, our warrior quickly calls Mo's attention so he can see something. It's the grand building of the Bing caravan where all the brilliant transactions in the kingdom take place. Smiling, the protagonist says the building is incredible. However, before they can continue the journey, someone appears and calls them. It's a man sent by the guild to receive the two young adventurers. With a gentle smile, Russell shows he's a good guy. Immediately, the two follow him into a magical elevator that will take them to a new world. Before they arrive, the man says that both will stay on the 88th floor in the forge room. Extending her hands, our young woman asks if he's the person the master sent to help them. At that moment, the man immediately closes his eyes. Pointing inside the room, he says he'll tell the rest of the story once the two enter. We see that it was truly a beautiful and magical place. At that moment, Russell turns the doorknob that leads to the arrival hall. However, before saying anything, he states that before he begins to speak, he would like to inform them that what he's about to say carries the same weight as what Master Robin told the duo. Making a very important bow, the youths kneel and say that the swords they requested are there to help. Soon after, a message is opened that truly seems to be of utmost importance. Russell then reveals that a new mission has appeared for both of them equally, and that currently the secret weapon that must not be passed to anyone has been smuggled to the Bing caravan, which could be very dangerous. The man states that the item will soon be put up for auction, held on the top floor of the caravan. In this case, the main objective of the mission is to obtain the item from the auction by any means necessary. In this new phase, our heroes will now be known as Ariane, Marie, and Maxim. Sometime later, the duo arrives at the auction house, a beautiful place where people wore very elegant and fancy clothes. At that moment, we see the staff announcing the arrival of Ariane. Wearing high heels from the latest fashion, he begins to enter the venue. At that moment, everyone had their eyes on the girl who radiated beauty wherever she went, including young men who seemed smitten by the girl. We see that in order to participate in those auctions, first and foremost, Ki had to appear as part of high society. Hidden in a large suit of armor, Lee observed every detail of the place. Looking sharply at everyone, our girl continued walking slowly among the elite young men. Suddenly, Akajit von Lame appears and invites Ki to sit at his table. The young woman accepts the invitation and thanks him for the kindness. In single file, the three proceed to the table area. As they walked, they noticed some silly giggles from people who felt like they owned the entire universe. Intrigued, Lee wonders why everyone is laughing. Arriving at the table, the duo comes face to face with a banquet that seemed to have been prepared with great care and refinement. Smiling, a woman says the girl is very welcome, especially for being from the Ariac family, and immediately draws an awkward laugh from the other ladies who insist on correcting the woman's unusual pronunciation. Meanwhile, our girl gives a slight motion with her thin and delicate fingers. Wiping away tears from laughing so hard, the woman tries to bring up a topic about the young lady's hometown. Immediately, knowing exactly what story to tell, he says she owned a vineyard in her city. Two other women then ask if her nobility comes from agriculture, and one of them states that, in that case, the Ariane family should try harder since they're half-elves. The other one seems to have more sense and is shocked by that twisted talk. Immediately, the women notice the choker that Ki is wearing around her neck and continue with their prejudiced comments. Keeping a vile demeanor, Akajit asks for the young woman's choker to be removed. Immediately, a bald soldier approaches the girl to do the job. Asking her not to blame him, he reaches his fingers toward her, saying he's just following orders. But before he could even touch the girl, a hand grabs his arm. We see that he was caught off guard by our guardian, who obviously wouldn't let that happen. Threatening the man with full intent, Arlie asks if he has a death wish, leaving the women completely shocked. With a confident smile, our girl finds the situation amusing, saying that apparently the Akajit family only recruits the worst as knights. Her remark causes outrage among the high society snobs, who start complaining louder and louder. However, our elf was already tired of everything and declares that she will no longer accept any kind of insult. And to get revenge, she proposes a knight's duel. Drawing his legendary flaming sword, Lee tells everyone he is ready, and that he will win in the name of his family's honor. The duel excites the people around them. Thirsty for a fight, the bald guy declares that he's also ready for battle to defend the ladies of high society. He draws his weapon and quickly reveals that his level is 34. Observing his opponent closely, our boy analyzes that in the end, the man didn't have much skill after all. Starting one of those typical chase scenes in the hall, we see that the prota defended himself well from the first strike, and it only took one of the soldiers' movements for him to realize the man was way too slow. Gripping his powerful legendary sword, Lee delivers a strike without holding back. The villain's head goes flying due to the sheer force of the impact. With the body falling to the ground, when the protagonist saw that big-headed guy, he ran to attack even more. All the rich people around were very surprised. The ladies began to get irritated, as the rumor going around was that the family's defense was weak. Pointing a finger in another knight's face, one of the women orders him to get that trash out of her sight immediately. Promptly, the blonde man introduces himself as the Wind Knight Longshell, and says that under Lady Akajit's command, he will eliminate Lee right then and there. As he drew his sword, he charged toward the young man, taking advantage of a moment of distraction. However, the protagonist quickly senses something approaching, and places his hand on his sword to defend himself. That's when the blonde fool realizes he's gotten himself into a truly dangerous battle. Our boy shouts from inside his armor, asking if the other guy is done yet. Panicking over the blow to come, the knight simply calls our boy a monster. That's when we hear the final sound of that cowardly poser, echoing through the whole area. Right after, we see the blonde guy and the bald one lying flat on the ground, leaving everyone around completely shocked once again. With her graceful blue leap, he begins to approach her knight. Taking advantage of the stares, she shouts, saying she is deeply disappointed with everything that happened that night, because besides disrespecting other families, that group had been extremely racist against her origins. Continuing her speech, the young woman states that it was truly shameful, and that no one should forget that this was supposed to be a place where all cultures could come together. Everyone is surprised by the beautiful speech and starts clapping, leaving Ki a little embarrassed with so much attention. Out of nowhere, a bearded man in a hood appears. Lee decides to stay still. However, the man states he has been waiting for him. At that moment, the tower seemed increasingly lit and crowded. It seems like only now things are truly about to begin in Lee and Ki's journey. Taking off her earrings, the young woman says that so far they've done well at the high society meeting, but the real mission is at the auction house. Without saying anything, Lee just watches the young woman completely enchanted. Noticing that strange look, he tries to change the subject and asks why, but the young man simply says he's proud of her performance. Smiling at the boy's comment, she says she kind of already had some experience with that sort of thing. Grinning widely, he asks if the girl is from nobility, talking like someone who's done this before. Ki, however, says that she was actually once a slave to nobles, leaving the protagonist stunned. The young woman then says that's why she already knew how nobles naturally behave, revealing next that she once had a deep desire for revenge. However, nowadays she's a new woman. Realizing he brought up a terrible subject, the boy tries to fix the mood by apologizing. But the young woman gives him a solid slap, telling him to chill about it. While staring firmly at Lee, Ki says that after this mission, she'll be on vacation. So it's best they hurry and finish the job. At that very moment far away, we see the wheels of what looks like a carriage. It's a small cart transporting people who are talking about some kind of deal. We see Ki and Mose discussing the auction that will happen very soon, and that they need to find out who's buying the scores and get rid of them. For that, they must identify the targets by bidding high. In his thoughts, Lee says that this is the Aiden auction house of the Bing caravan. At that moment, the hall door opens and off go our warriors into the unknown. We see a master of ceremonies who greets everyone attending the auction that evening. According to him, tonight many items more precious than pure gold will be auctioned. He then declares the bidding season officially open. In a matter of seconds, a guy shows up pushing what looks like something truly rare and precious. The master of ceremonies prepares to reveal the item, leaving our duo very curious. When the cloth is pulled away, we find out that the item is the long-awaited preserved nail of the last princess of the fallen nation. Lee and Ki take a deep breath, thinking that what they were looking for would show up right away. However, before anything else, a new mission appears right in front of them and seems to be directly connected to that nail. The announcer then says the starting price of the item is 3 tokens. Someone from the back raises their hand and immediately offers the opening bid. Right away, others begin offering even higher bids. When the charismatic presenter realizes that there were people willing to pay 17 tokens for that nail, he became increasingly excited. Soon after, the place fell silent. Banging the gavel, the auction presenter declares that the item is sold. Then he congratulates the buyer of the nail. Taking a deep breath, Lee says that he's starting to lose his strength. But Ki says that the adventure hasn't even truly begun yet. He urgently needs to calm down. The presenter then announces that it's time to move on to the next item on the list, leaving the duo anxious once again. The item was related to music and belonged to the greatest musician of all time, a certain crazy musician. At this moment, we see that the item being auctioned is the object of desire for our heroes, the score that means so much to the master. After all that time, our clever boy realizes that maybe that score isn't just an ordinary item. To begin with, the presenter says that the starting price will be 4 tokens. As expected, several people start bidding higher. We reach the number of 9 tokens, and the announcer asks if anyone will bid more. From the back, someone shouts to offer 25 tokens for the score. At that moment, the presenter gets even more excited about the possibility and asks if more fools will offer a higher value. However, all that can be heard is silence. Smiling at each other, our duo of buyers feels very happy to have succeeded. The presenter prepares to strike the gavel. However, someone shouts that they would pay exactly 50 tokens for that artifact, leaving the announcer shocked. That was so surprising for our duo that they started looking around to see who made the bid. Ki then asks Lee to focus and not move. Shouting as if there were no tomorrow, our half-elf insists that she would pay 75 tokens for that score. This drives the presenter wild. Surprised, Lee asks if his friend is sure, and she tells him to relax, as she knows someone will offer more. Raising his voice, an old man with a beard claims he will offer exactly 100 tokens for that valuable score. The presenter reveals that he has never seen such a high bid, especially this early in the auction. Smiling, he tells Lee that she warned him this would happen. Looking back, the young man says that now they just need to catch that bastard once and for all. But when he turns his face, he is shocked by what he sees. Not understanding, the elf asks what happened. We, alongside the duo, discover who the person is who is willing to pay such a high price for the papers. It is the special ranked a criminal, Lero. Sometime later, we see the man running. He is immediately stopped by Ki and Lee. But the villain is quite clever and reveals that he knew they were watching him. Realizing he would be a cruel opponent, Lee grits his teeth, trying to control his fury. Summoning a deep magic, Lero says that he was waiting for that moment. Thinking to himself, the protagonist says that if he's hit, he will definitely be massacred. With all this pomp, the villain makes a point of maintaining his elegance to introduce himself once again to the young duo. Soon, Lee asks Ki to be very careful, as she isn't a player who knows how to measure the levels of others. He then reveals that the level 102 man is a monster. Maintaining his enthusiasm with the situation, Lero insists on speaking difficult words and appearing much more elegant than he already is. While stroking his white goatee, he repeats Moses' name. The elf then asks if the boy knew that rogue from somewhere. After saying he bought something from him in Lindirk, he asks if the fool still remembers him. Lero lets out a slight chuckle. Then he states that their encounter was very memorable. Lee is shocked by the man's agility in approaching. Immediately, we realize that the sorcerer had the ability to run back and forth very quickly. But Ki bluntly says that she doesn't care at all whether that encounter was memorable or not. She won't stand there idly while the two chat. Pulling out the blessed sword of Sparagon, she decides to attack. Running back and forth, Lero once again closes in on Lee. Snapping his fingers quickly in front of the boy, he makes Lee disappear, leaving Ki completely alone and worried. Far from there, we see that they ended up in a different location. The gambler then says that the elf will not find them there, revealing that he just wanted to have a little chat with the boy. Turning his back to Lee, he remarks that he was surprised to meet the famous immortal Mose, whom everyone has been talking about. Smiling next in a macabre way, the protagonist widens his eyes in shock. With a slight smile, Lero refocuses. Wrapped in that black cloak, he claims he had already chosen over 1,000 immortals, but all of them sold everything they had without even using the items properly, except for Mose, which made him change his plan. Pointing his finger at the boy, Lero says he changed everything because of him. With glowing eyes, he then asks why the boy became a swordsman, stating that he knows everything that happened was no simple coincidence. At that moment, we see Lee with his eyes wide open. The gambler then states that, in fact, everything was part of his plan. Mouth agape, the protagonist asks why. While wondering if he had never had any luck at all, falling to the ground, Lee wonders what kind of thing was happening. Explaining, Lero says he did what he did so that world could be conquered by the immortals. Making everything worse, the man starts working on the boy's mind and tells him to use his anger to conquer the world, and to avenge his family, which was destroyed by the Empire. Lee is confused since he wasn't used to hearing about revenge in that way. With red eyes, Lero gets closer to the boy and commands him to attack everyone who wears a golden crown. After all, the boy has everything it takes. Could that have been the reason for all the confusion? Because if so, the young man might finally make his plan work. Thinking to himself, Lee says that Lero is human too, and wonders if meeting Kiho, who once also sought revenge, was all part of Lero's plan. But all that talk started to make no sense, because Lee knew he had made his own choices. Trying to resist all that talk, the boy stands up and states that he was not part of any plan, while the man continues staring at him intensely. Grabbing his necklace and remembering that the item had saved him, the young man thanks Lero for the stone, then says that this time he'll be the one saving the man. After being threatened by the hero, the weirdo panics, for he truly didn't expect that move. Receiving a mission to take down the gambler, the boy realizes he might earn a powerful reward. Delivering the first strike against that bastard, Lee begins a flurry of attacks, making Lero widen his eyes. The man manages to leap backward and escape, and repeating Moses' name shows he's determined to end it all once and for all. Activating his dark and powerful magic, emerging from his body like a specter, black smoke is ready to strike the boy. In his mind, the protagonist wonders what kind of dark aura that is. Laughing, Lero asks if the boy is surprised and says that what he sees is his resentment and strength. For the first time, our hero feels cornered, as he knows that Scumbag is truly powerful. As he grows stronger and stronger, the man asks if Lee is sure about the choice he made, stating that the boy still has one chance to choose the right path and save himself. Lee then makes it clear that he doesn't want to join the man. Still calm, Lero asks why, then shouts that he could make the boy the king of the world. Trying harder and harder to tempt our warrior, the man says he only needs Lee's power. But with all of his inner strength for good, the protagonist resists the temptation of that filthy being who kept trying to corrupt him. However, that wounded the enemy's pride, who started casting his evils in the form of shadows. Showing a clear sign of rage, he said he'd have to defeat the boy with his own hands. But our warrior made sure to say that, if that's what he wants, it's worth noting it won't be such an easy challenge. A true ancestral duel begins, and we see Lero holding Lee's sword. The man says he knows very well that the boy came from a completely different world than the one they're in. He then reveals that he sold his body and soul to study our warrior. While fighting, the young man tries to think about how this will all end. Lero then says he knows the protagonist only came there seeking thrills and fun, and that's why he made sure to give that to the boy. Throwing it all in the player's face, he claims he was the one who gave him his powers, along with dreams and stimulation, as well as pleasure and fun. But he doesn't understand how Lee could reject his offer, especially since he was there only in search of amusement, so he shouldn't care about what happens in that world. Lee then says that he ended up in this world with the true intention of making a lot of money in the real world. And thanks to Lero, he kept getting stronger and gained a lot of experience. But the more he ventured, the more he realized how beautiful and grandly magical this world was, because every place he visited made his heart beat faster. To Lero's surprise, the boy could only express his feeling of gratitude. He really couldn't help that marginal being destroy the world. Being insistent, the gambler asks again why. Speaking firmly, Lee begins to try to convince him that the enemy didn't have the eyes of someone who wants to destroy the world. That's why he will help him end his pain. Placing his hand on his face, it seems the man really didn't expect all that speech and lets out a laugh. The laugh gets louder and louder. Lero then shows that he's truly determined to destroy the world for the sake of revenge. He asks what nonsense the boy is making up. But if he wouldn't listen to him, it was really time to end everything. Grabbing his powerful sword, Lee places the weapon right in front of the man. With a dark look, Lero orders the young man to die. Lee attacks furiously, aiming to strike his enemy even more. But it seems his strength was diminishing more and more, and now he only had 30% HP left. Lero then orders the boy to open his eyes wide, to see his hatred and his revenge. At that moment, he runs to attack the boy and sees all his power rapidly diminishing in an unprecedented way. Lee realizes that this way, he won't be able to reach the opponent's mind, Immediately, the duel takes on huge proportions and everything keeps getting worse and fiercer. Looking at Lero, the young man thinks that this guy will never manage to escape the cycle of revenge. Soon, he really needs to think of something before it's too late. A radiant light shines suddenly. Immediately, the sword's power seems to be even brighter than it normally is, startling the boy. We discover that after destroying 100 monsters, Lee gained the effect of a Toria's mark. Looking at the panel, the boy wonders what ability that is. However, at that moment, his body collapses. Pulling his sword harder and harder, the young man feels he will have the strength to fight against the evil of the world. He then drives the mighty solar storm into the ground, causing a massive explosion of sunlight. For this, that bastard wasn't expecting, and he gets scared upon realizing the powerful divine light coming his way. A gigantic hurricane begins to swirl, not caring about what's in its way. Until finally, we go back in time and learn the true story behind that terrible revenge. It seems that the Empire's worms destroyed the man's family, who until then had been a very good and peaceful man. Soon after, time passed and he started gaining powers and wealth, all for his greatest revenge. With his hands covered in red juice, he began living in pursuit of his goal, unafraid of what would come afterward. His hatred was so immense that he couldn't forgive even children. As time went by, he got lost in his ideas and no longer knew who the true villains of the story were. And when he realized that what he did was wrong, it was already too late. That's when he was greatly shocked upon realizing that Lero also had a human side in the end. The man starts to disappear slowly while thanking the protagonist for everything, revealing that he always believed the boy would be his salvation. Like a celestial glow, he evaporates, becoming a bright cosmic star. Quickly closing his eyes, Lee asserts that, in fact, it was Lero who saved him in the end. Right after, we notice that a huge, powerful sphere appeared in the field. We see Kiho, who was very worried about the young man and thought she had lost him for good this time. When she spots Lee, she runs to try to find out what was happening. It was at that moment that a secret trace appeared before him, and now the guy was really more skilled. Meanwhile, high above the city, one of those fast ships racing through the air crosses the screen. At the same time, our hero looks closely at the screen. Immediately, we see that it's an incredible piece of news about the new ability he's acquired. To the boy's surprise, that would give him many new powers. Soon after, we discover that the ability could be activated soon, and it's called Ruin of Luck. That combination is so incredible that new abilities will soon be conjured. He also receives a Ruin of Combinations capable of storing colors, the same ability Lero used to wield. The time has come to gather courage and use it before it falls into truly wrong hands. If there's one thing he learned during this last battle with Lero, it's that even though this is a virtual reality world, even if its residents are really just NPCs wandering around, they are still humans with emotions like hatred and regret, unlike the old NPCs who were completely programmed. At that moment, the hero begins to wonder if this can really be considered just a game and not a reality. Suddenly, a voice asks if he's okay. Realizing it was the beautiful elf, the boy quickly tries to compose himself and confirms that yes, everything was fine. Then, with a big smile, she asks her companion what he'll do with his long-awaited vacation. However, Lee reveals that he hasn't managed to plan anything, making it clear that she has planned something. The elf says she wants to go to her homeland and stay there for an indefinite time, revealing next that the place is a small town located in Asura. Trying to tag along for the trip, the boy says he'd like to visit the place someday. Since Kiho was very polite, she says he'll always be very welcome in her homeland. Meanwhile, in the center of Asparagon, everything looked beautiful and you could already hear conversations in the air among those passing by. But our boy still had that terrible headache and was feeling weaker and weaker. Thinking to himself, he realizes that now that he completed that mission, it's time for a short break. Suddenly, the magical crystal ball starts to ring. To his surprise, it was his old friend Sharon calling. Later, somewhere else, we see a beautiful house. Four hands celebrate life with a nice cold frothy beer. It had really been a long time since those young ones had met and each had ended up living their own brand new adventures. Our Lee had changed so much since the last meeting that he didn't even know where to begin telling the group his news. But the other guy gave a sign that he could go ahead with that update journey. No problem. It seems that in recent times some things had changed and happened, and he was proud of himself. The young man then shows that he now had a magical engagement ring with his girlfriend. Immediately, the others at the table say that's really cool. Lee could only congratulate his friend for having a new girlfriend. The red-haired girl then reveals that the guy is dating an elf. When he hears that, Lee ends up spitting out his beer. His head almost explodes as he realizes that yes, it is possible to date an NPC, and that after that last battle, he saw that many people enter the game to fulfill their dreams. And more than that, the truth is that NPCs also had lives and desires of their own, just like any person. However, after Lero, he still hadn't fully digested everything. At that moment, he hears someone calling his name. The guy in the green hoodie then asks if he can call him Kyun. Thanking his friend, he says he was able to pay off his college debt thanks to the help he got from the game, saying that now he's earning a lot of money in there. A wonderful feeling of gratitude fills the room and leaves our hero speechless. Lee then decides to give a soft smile, explaining next that if the other hadn't been in the group, he would have had a lot of trouble trying to help people out there. In the end, each of them had done their part in those recent battles. Sharon then says that if it weren't for Mose, some really terrible things would have happened. The man in black then comments that other players also fell into that trap, and many ended up quitting the game because of it. And on top of that, they took down a field boss, and if it weren't for the hero, they really wouldn't have made it. A true feeling of comfort was washing over the warrior, who now seemed happy with the simplest things. Thinking, he says that the opportunity given to him by the red-haired girl had turned into new chances for many others. Laughing, the young woman says she quit her job thanks to the money she made in the game, and everyone laughs upon hearing that news. Looking at the girl, the man quickly says that he was sure she would do that sooner or later since she was just an intern anyway. After boasting that she now had way more money, Sharon remembers she had something important to show her friends. A new, magical, and quite expensive bow, which she had to work really hard to obtain. In his thoughts, Lee says he believes it must have been truly difficult to get that item, but he knew those two young ones would work hard in their roles. However, on the other hand, he was different, and that bothered him for a few moments. Remembering that after obtaining the Palo Run star, it is undeniable that he became much stronger. But to be honest, that achievement happened with great ease due to luck and help from others. However, instead of dedicating himself, he kept relying on a streak of luck. He then reveals that he's come to terms with his situation, even though he promised that, if given another chance, he would give his best to achieve new accomplishments, just as he promised that he would take full advantage of the circuit, just like Gale and Sharon. However, he didn't fulfill any of it, and now he needs to regain focus and work hard. Immediately standing up, our boy catches everyone's attention at the table, causing the conversation to pause. Proposing a new mission among the friends, he states that it's been a while since they last met, and it's time to move again. But the truth is, at that moment, he had no idea what this new mission would put them through. Sometime later, far from there, we see a grand hidden cave. Trying to keep his breath steady, our hero seemed exhausted. Everyone was scared, saying they didn't imagine things would turn out this way. At that moment, we see someone on the edge of a cliff. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this battle was too big for the four innocent young ones. Immediately, an alert appears announcing that the time has come for the challenge involving those powerful reptilian creatures. But before that, it's necessary to understand how all this happened. As our friends set off on the new mission, they took the opportunity to talk in the train carriage. Immediately, one of them pulls out a book that explained more about the challenge they would face a few hours later. It was against creatures that live in the depths of the mountain and move in packs. At this moment, the most elegant one even asks if 12 isn't too few, since the mission mentioned an entire colony. We see that the group expected there to be at least 500 of these creatures. Lee then says that someone must surely be leading these creatures. Clearly, Mose was right, and it was necessary to focus on the leaders, as they would be the key to the journey. But to attract them, it's necessary to prioritize occupying a specific area and divide the tasks among them. Soon after, the group begins to clearly separate the tasks to be carried out in this battle. Since the guy in the green jacket could use magic, he would support the protagonist, while the uncle of the group states that he will protect the young man with his shield. Confused, Mose asks why everyone wants to stay by his side. At that moment, they affirm it's because he is the central factor of the group, and that plan is the one with the highest chance of success, so Lee should just accept it. Everyone goes quiet, waiting to see Mose's reaction. The young man doesn't say anything and gives only a slight smile to indicate that he agrees with the plan. Then immediately, he shouts to everyone, saying that he finally understood the plan and that he agreed with the division. We see a magical orb that was acting as a real lantern in that dark and devastated place. In fact, it was a prism, and it seemed too delicate to be used in that environment. Next, something seems to catch the young woman's attention. Letting out a loud scream at that moment, she orders the troops to stop moving. While everyone looked to the back of the place, they felt that a terrible, strange noise was coming from there. Immediately, the brave warrior states that this should be the right place to find the creatures for the battle. However, the guy in the green jacket asks everyone to wait a bit. Looking carefully, they realize that the truth is, the path was ending right before their eyes. And ahead, there was a large cliff. Shouting loudly, the young man states that they must be very careful not to fall into the abyss. It was exactly at that moment that a bright light appeared right behind him, resembling an eye. Someone yells his name, and Guile realizes that he's in trouble. Sharon tells his friend to be careful. Immediately, we hear a blade in the air. It was our warrior who could finally use his new abilities for this campaign. Drawing his sword, the warrior is ready to face the terrifying being and start the fight. Meanwhile, the others try to help Guile, who says he's fine. However, it was at that moment that more eyes appeared in the darkness, and they realized they were really in trouble. Many eyes were staring at them from the depths of the lonely mountain. Mouth agape, Mose says that there are many enemies there. Then a new message appears for them, stating that they need to remove all the terrifying beasts from that cave. However, panic sets, and when they all realize that in reality there are 1,500 of those creatures. Before fear could even take over, they hear a scream from Sharon ordering everyone to return to their proper positions. More monsters appear, and this time they're ready to take a bite out of one of our heroes. But the guy's shield is extremely powerful and able to protect his friend Guile. Immediately, a very strong light bursts from within the shield and begins to shine in the darkness. A scream is heard, and it becomes clear that it's from the lizards who are launched through the air after being seriously struck by the warrior. Meanwhile, our team starts organizing to try to face the challenge. That's when one of the warriors realizes there are two main creatures and that they're in a terrible place for a battle. But something immediately catches Moses' attention. Sharon, with her bow, charges into the fight, and we see that the young woman is almost being cornered. Yelling to put her act, Mose tells her it's time to change strategies and get out of that dreadful place. Lee jumps in front of the beast and says he'll draw one of them in to see what happens. At that moment, without any fear, the warrior girl runs so fast she jumps over the creatures. Immediately, the brave warriors prepare to truly begin that terrible battle. Mose realizes they need to think of something different because there are too many enemies to fight one by one. Meanwhile, fear crawls up their spines and paralyzes those who were previously confident about what was coming. Seeing that Guile is trembling, the young woman yells at him to get a grip and pull himself together in the middle of all that chaos. But the guy says they're totally screwed. That's when they realize the plan had failed and it's time to flee before the worst happens. But our warrior girl refuses to quit and does everything not to throw in the towel. At that point, courage begins returning among the group. Everyone realizes it's time to finally take real action. Not to mention that, in the middle of all that, they hadn't even spotted a leader among the creatures. That's something important they still need to do. Lee watches everything and tries to come up with a plan that could make things end well again. Right after, he receives a wonderful alert and looks surprised. We see Lee crack a slight smile, because the Solar Storm ability has been activated again. The warrior then says he'll protect everyone with his shield while they escape. But Lee says it's not necessary and that he'll handle the situation. Suddenly, the lizards decide to attack with full force. One by one, they jump on the boy, trying to destroy his abilities. At that moment, the team becomes incredibly desperate, unable to believe what they're witnessing, and they start calling out Moses' name. An incredible explosion occurs, causing solar radiation to spread all throughout the cave, making the shield warrior cover his eyes. Suddenly, something catches the man's attention. It's Lee, completely unharmed and far more powerful than before. Determined, the protagonist says that the time has come. We see that there are still many creatures left to defeat, and at last, the real fight is about to begin. At that moment, a massive wave of fire begins sweeping through the area, and the heat only grows stronger. More than that, the lizards also begin to burn. Their desperation is so great that they start trying to find a way out. A tremendous uproar starts as Lee tries to strike the crying creatures. All the friends can say is how incredibly awesome that was. At that moment, the girl looks at her friend completely enchanted because she knew he was strong, but not that strong. Then immediately, a burning flame scorches the wall and all those disgusting things are melted by Lee's powerful sword. Surrounded by flames, our hero makes sure to draw attention wherever he goes. Finally, they manage to eliminate a good portion of the terrible beings of darkness. Now it's time to join forces and continue the journey toward other creatures, and so they keep advancing gradually as a team. One uses his support magic, while the other lays into the monsters, and with that, the team manages to halt the advance of the comets, just like in the good old days. However, a new message appears. It seems the time has come to finally face the true boss of that obstacle. Desperate, the girl points to a spot, and everyone looks inside the cave. As a warning sign, our hero freezes for a moment, when he realizes that there really is a being different from the others. Clinging to a lizard, that creature looks far too strange. Worse yet, it resembles a more primitive human being. Not even the bravest could believe it when they saw it really was an actual person. Coming toward them, the human walked like a beast. Smiling, the man counts the number of arms and legs of the team, concluding that he's facing people. "Who was that guy?" Lee asked. Immediately, he said he was a fallen person. The protagonist then asks what that means. It was then revealed that he was a hunchback, and that's why he was there. Apparently, his mother had thrown him into that place. Everyone shows their outrage at the story. We learn that the young man wasn't the only one in that place, until the others turned to bones. Soon, the crazy man claims that the girl looked like his mother. The group then tries to convince the man that they are not there to discard anyone. At that moment, the hunchback says that his friends took care of him when he was a child. Lee stands still, trying to understand the whole story. With his terrible laugh, the man continues speaking, revealing that his greatest wish is to destroy that hole. At that moment, our heroes scream in despair, because if he decides to destroy it, the surrounding villages will be destroyed. However, the young man screams that he hates the king of the villages and wants revenge, since the man did horrible things to him, such as threatening several families, forcing the parents to get rid of their children with the sole purpose of making the village a better place. At this moment, the group feels pity for the young man. Sharon then says that's why people didn't have the best expressions when they accepted the mission. The crazy man states that he'll get very angry if the team tries to stop him. The allies then don't know how to act. Thinking, Lee says that no matter what the reward was, this mission is very difficult, and that probably it's the first time his friends are facing something like this. Soon it's time to choose what's truly best for everyone. The group begins to debate among themselves about what the best course of action is. Approaching, the protagonist asks what they have in mind. The warrior then suggests that they try to persuade the young man. Meanwhile, a stranger watches them intently. Lee then apologizes for hurting his friends earlier, but still he can't let him destroy the hole because his mother would be hurt. Soon, the team promises to take care of the king, so no other child will be thrown there. Then it becomes clear that the guy was just a child. Next, the protagonist promises a truce between them to finally proceed with the main plan, and that after dealing with the king, he'll go back to help him leave the cave. Sealing the pact with a pinky swear, the two make a pact of friendship. At this point, Lee stands up to continue the mission. Speaking to the team, he says he would like to make a proposal. Far from there, in the beautiful city, the day has already begun. Speaking to his crystal ball, the protagonist tries to catch up on things. Smiling, he states that he received a mission and would like to pass it on to the person on the other side of the line. Back in the cave, we see someone surprised, because it seems no creature remains in that place. The group then receives a huge reward in gold. When the analyst leaves, they can only celebrate, thinking the guy in the green jacket says that apparently Moses' plan was starting to work. About 2 hours later, things happened. Someone in the group says that they want both the reward and to take revenge on the king. The guy in the green jacket then asks if it's possible to get both. The warrior says there must be a way. Smiling and his friends, our brave hero affirms that anything is possible in the game. Soon, as long as they stay within the limits, they can really get whatever they want. Since the first goal was to remove the creatures from the place, he asked the child to leave the mines. Everything is per the plan he devised. Meanwhile, in the city, everyone wondered if the visitors were part of the Order of Knights. A real gossip began to spread as they walked. Someone then shouted that they were there to investigate all the crimes of the Lord of the Mud Castle. Smiling, Mose thinks his ally arrived at the perfect time. We see that all along it was Kiho who had been called for the mission. Soon, the Lord leaves the castle to see what all that noise was about. The man then says that receiving a visit like that excites him, but the peasants were becoming increasingly frightened. Meanwhile, people were crying out for Ki's help. Crying, a man says that his daughter was beautiful, but he had to throw her into the cave. Suddenly, someone tells Ki that apparently they won't even need to search for the evidence. We discover that the person was an old acquaintance of ours. The boy says that if all the laments of those people are true, he would really like to know how to help. However, the Lord says that no one there is more loyal than he is, and that those who were cursed at birth should not be allowed to live. Everyone around grows increasingly irritated with that kind of talk. A real argument breaks out between the king and Lee's team. But our angel was there trying to find a solution, saying he came because of certain rumors. However, all that discussion only made the king more stressed. Nervously, he asks who dared to make a request against the king of the castle. He then orders his soldiers to arrest them all. At that moment, all the villagers realize that a battle is about to begin. Dark and serious, the blonde knight stares at Larry. Activating his power, he asks what the man thinks he'll be able to do in his presence, defying the evil lord who only wanted to bring tragedy into people's lives. He says that people like that man pollute the continent without realizing their own insignificance. Realizing he was being insulted, the lord begins losing his composure more and more. At that moment, the angelic being acts immediately, saying he's starting to lose patience with that kind of attitude. Suddenly, Hire decides to deactivate his power, because the mission was not his. Panicking at the threat, the king has no idea how to react. Out of nowhere, a powerful energy overwhelms him. Thanks to Ki, who at lightning speed delivers justice with her sword. Everyone is shocked by the scene, but they quickly begin to celebrate, for now they are free. At that moment, new abilities are unlocked and the mission appears as completed. Smiling, the armored warrior says that Mose was really right. Suddenly, someone catches the protagonist's attention. Sharon approaches and hands the boy a note left by the crazy kid from the mines. Without hesitation, our boy opens the paper, and we discover it's a letter written by the young one, who, in addition to thanking them for everything, left an invitation. We find out there's a large ship inside the cave. Ki approaches and asks if he has any idea how far her home is from there, just to be randomly called like that. Smiling, the protagonist says he missed her, leaving the elf a little embarrassed. Far from there, back at the tavern, our friends talk about everything that happened. Curious, Sharon asks what Lee's relationship with Ki is. Smiling, the young woman says that if she had to give it a name, she'd say they're work colleagues. After all, that's what any player would say. Drinking more and more, the protagonist thinks he hoped it would be something more special than just that. Later, he decides to return to the cave and realizes the place is cleaner than usual and filled with water. Puzzled, the boy wonders if he's in the right place. Suddenly, something rises from the water. It's the ship mentioned by the abandoned child. Lee can't believe what he's seeing, saying it really is a powerful and majestic ship. Suddenly, our hero gains access to a ruin of luck. A message appears, asking if he wants to use the ability. Without hesitation, the boy clicks to confirm. To his surprise, a very bright light appears, and now the ship is transformed into a core. We realize there are many abilities linked to this boat. Once again, he encounters someone, and is surprised to see the person standing in front of him. It's the angelic knight who always helped him. We see that neither of them expected that meeting at that moment. Curious, the protagonist asks if Ki will be held responsible for what happened, but the angelic knight asks what he's talking about. Lee then explains that according to the order, the young woman committed a sin. The blonde youth then says that's true, but that he is still human, leaving the protagonist speechless, because the holy mag was happy with what had happened. After dropping that bombshell, he vanishes into the woods. It's then that Lee realizes the guy was a human just like him. Far away, we see a peaceful, quiet place. We see Kiho, the terrible hangover from the night before, and the warrior finds it all very amusing. Smiling, the young woman says she's happy to have made new friends, and that they don't care that she's an elf. That was the real reason the warrior liked our hero so much. Our boy gets embarrassed and doesn't know what to say. Saying goodbye to her friend, the young woman says it's time for breakfast. In the dining hall, we see lots of people eating and chatting. Meanwhile, a brief interrogation begins for the boy who's just trying to focus on his meal. Lee says he's thinking of looking for another mission and asks if the group wants to come with him. Without hesitation, everyone agrees to participate. The girl, increasingly excited, tells everyone to start getting ready. The time has come for everyone to embark on a quest for new adventures. Meanwhile, our brave hero was looking for a new way to experience the game. Then, extending his hand, the boy made sure to invite the elf for an adventure journey. Seeing the boy's hands reaching out to her, our girl becomes paralyzed. Smiling, she says that she accepts the invitation. Meanwhile, we see the boat crossing through the clouds. They couldn't believe how beautiful it was to be on it. Everything was even more beautiful on the inside, and we can see that everyone was shocked by the environment. He asks where Lee got the boat from, and he says it was somewhat of an accident. At this point, the girl couldn't stop looking at a creature behind her. The protagonist then says that it's a red-eared tree fairy responsible for the foundation of the place. Everyone was startled to realize that the creature wasn't a statue. Then the ship docks in front of the city. Mose and the others quickly disembark. Immediately, the young man suggests that they walk to the Information Guild, but something strange happens and we soon realize that it was a kind of rebellion. The protagonist decides to squeeze between the people to see what was happening. They then discover that all guild services have been suspended. Everyone is left speechless by the news. Suddenly, someone shouts, calling everyone to the square. Lee immediately looks back and starts running, stating that it seems like the TV is going to broadcast some very important information. We find out that some tasteless prank was happening in real time, and no one could quite understand what was going on at that moment. Someone then announces that the system has been taken over and players won't be able to force the live broadcast to end. Covered in strawberry juice, the mysterious person states that they have a question for the immortals. They want to know who allowed them to enter their lands and do whatever they pleased, claiming that they know no one gave them permission for anything. So they are nothing but invaders, who have stolen from them and humiliated them. Filled with anger, the man points to other players being held hostage. Nervously, Lee thinks that everyone there is innocent. A bad guy appears, saying that he is the true lord of the game, and declares real war on all the players. A new mission is activated mysteriously, and now Lee has to face these beings. We noticed that several communication sites were reporting the incident. In the communities, all anyone was talking about was the so-called invasion. Many players were now worried about the future of the game. Meanwhile, the flying ship continues on its journey. Mose remains silent, trying to analyze the situation. At this point, Ki approaches with a leaf tea for him to drink. Soon, both begin to reflect on this terrible incident. While drinking, the young woman says that she was really surprised, probably because she had been in wars since the moment she was born, to survive wolves and not to be abandoned by her parents. But now she's not sure if she can worry too much about other people's wars. Soon after, the young woman looks out the window and says that, according to a famous mage, the world was in a somewhat unstable state. That's why elves exist and are beings from other dimensions. Because of that, they had many fights when she was younger, and everyone was afraid and angry because she was an elf. But that immortals like Mose appeared, brave and daring people, even though they occasionally caused certain incidents. Taking the opportunity, Lee asks what she thinks of the players. Ki then says that she really likes their class, especially because they aren't prejudiced against her race. And of course, one of her favorite players is Mose. At that moment, both lean against the window and allow themselves to dream a little. Thinking, Lee says that apparently some players are truly evil, which means that Lidorn must have suffered a lot, which is a shame but doesn't justify his actions. Clenching his fist, he says that this war is wrong. He will soon put an end to the NPC's plan. Far from there, rain begins to fall amidst several people lying on the ground. We see only one surviving player, who wonders how they will stop the evil knight. Next, we see the ship continuing its journey. Inside, Ki says that the situation is really getting complicated. The armored warrior then asks if it's time to fight. Lee says that he intends to do so, but that the others are free to make their own choices. The group stares at each other for a few moments, and then everyone states that they will follow Mose. The warrior then says that if the protagonist is the leader, everything will work out. That way, everyone gets excited about the new adventure to come. Immediately, the hero says he doesn't think he's the best person to lead, showing that he's very concerned about everyone's safety. He then says the situation is very complicated, but if everyone wants to place their trust in him, they must fight by his side. All the allies celebrate his determination and bravery. He then pledges loyalty to the brave and strong Mose. Smiling, the young man says he promises to stay on the front lines. Far from there, we see some soldiers gathered, At that moment, they realize they have a very low ranking, and the situation keeps getting worse. A voice comes from the magic orb asking how things are going over there. The soldier says his troop was completely wiped out as well, so they decide to try to gather strength through magic. The big bald guy points and we see knights mounted on crows. A real war arena forms at that moment, with people running to try and save their own lives. However, the terrible creatures are very violent, so one of the soldiers says he'll buy them time, and prepares to strike a blow. But upon seeing how fast the creatures are, he thinks this is the end for him. Suddenly, a great explosion occurs and throws the monsters far away, thanks to a holy knight and his powerful magic. Everyone is shocked to see that it was the first player to enter the White Tower, the third-ranked mage on the official leaderboard, Kellyan. By sunset, we see the soldiers tense. Inside the barracks, someone yells while slamming the table, demanding clarification. In disbelief, one of the leaders asks if all 11,000 players and NPCs were really defeated. The other man says the enemies aren't ordinary NPCs, and says he's just happy to still be alive. Angrily, a bearded man says his guild was obliterated and demands to know what they were doing at that moment. Responding angrily, the younger guy asks how he dares to doubt them, while another tries to calm things down. Everyone stops and looks outside where a loud noise is coming from. Someone exclaims that the enemies are approaching and orders the tanks to go up front to protect the DPS in the back. The man commands not to waste time to check their armor. A series of commands are given to restore their health and mana. At this moment on the battlefield, we see a long line of enemies, as the man in the white cloak wonders if they could really win this. The enemy mounts are already in position for battle. The enemy leader apologizes to his comrades for having abandoned everything to follow him loyally, and says that not even the sun god could doubt their loyalty. Drawing his sword, he says he had placed his kindness in his wife, who was brutally killed by a player. Raising his sword, he orders the resentful warriors to charge forward. They all shout, raising their spears and roaring loudly. Then the leader calls the name of his group Black Griffins. Ordering them to spread their wings, the crowd of soldiers takes flight. We see them brutally charging at the opponents with full force. The soldiers have trouble handling the long reach of the spears combined with the mobility of the flying mounts. Then the mage in the white cloak casts lightning on one of the creatures, wiping it out. Worried, he says his magical energy is almost at its limit, and at this rate, they'll be annihilated soon. A system window pops up requesting mana assistance with the required amount of 1,000 mana. The boy wonders if there's really a player strong enough to request 1,000 mana. Thinking it's now or never, he quickly clicks to accept. We see the beautiful statue on the bow of the flying ship. At that moment, it appears through the clouds and people on the ground are amazed. Several cannons are prepared and ready to fire. Calculating, the statue says it has located the targets, a total of 1,871. A barrage of shots is fired from the ship, hitting the enemy soldiers and their mounts. Impressed by the destructive power, the soldiers ask who could be controlling that. Then they advance, taking advantage of the chaos in the enemy lines. From above, our hero asks if everyone is ready. His team looks at him, awaiting his next command. Finishing putting on his armor, he says they will descend and join the others. Several scenes of the brutal battle are shown. Suddenly, a massive crash occurs as our group lands, shaking everything around them. After the dust settles, we see the protagonist and his allies ready for battle. At that moment, with conviction, he shouts for them to charge ahead. Slipping past the 3 enemies with extreme agility, the elf finishes them off. The archer also shoots a barrage of arrows at several enemies at the same time. The uncle says that the hero should move forward while he keeps the enemies occupied for him. The boy then advances, quickly defeating 2 enemies while confirming. A soldier tries to hit our guy from behind, catching him off guard. Surprisingly, the enemy is stopped by magic. At this moment, we see the white cape mage thanking the boy for saving him, and that his name is Kellyan. The mage says he never imagined seeing such a large flying ship, and the protagonist introduces himself, stating his name. While fighting, a half-elf exclaims that now is not the time for introductions. Agreeing, both say they will leave that for later. We see a patch of land moving, but it was a reflection of our hero quickly advancing toward the enemies. Impressed with the speed of the opponents, the boy says that they are fast while narrowly dodging. Thinking dissatisfied, he says that it will be harder than he thought and that they are very strong because they are all war machines. Gathering fiery energy, he prepares a strike and shouts Artorias sword arts, delivering a powerful blow to several enemies at once. Without giving them time to recover, other enemies charge toward him. The protagonist, worried, thinks that it's too late. Skillfully, he blocks several strikes at the same time. At this moment, he accidentally bumps into the elf, asking if she's okay, while she replies that she is. Gripping his sword tightly, he tells her not to worry, and with a serious expression, he says that he will definitely protect her. The woman watches while smiling slightly. Charging at the enemies, she says she will protect herself and orders that our hero protect himself as well. With a smile, he thinks positively. Then he changes his posture and says that he will do everything he can. At that moment, he notices something and is shocked. A blonde man appears in a glimpse. The boy then says that they finally met and calls the enemy leader Lidoran, who is level 144. From a distance, the two lock eyes and tension fills the air. They quickly leap toward each other. Ready for battle, the two shout, The enemy strikes overhead while the protagonist blocks with his sword. After feeling the force of the blow, he thinks that he is being pressured. A powerful strike hits the boy's chest. He flies several meters before stopping. Complaining of pain in his head, he sees a window with statues, saying that he's been stunned. With a dark look, the enemy approaches while telling the hero that he should not live anymore. Desperate, the boy thinks that now is not the time. At the last second, the uncle intervenes with his shield, blocking the attack. Surprisingly, he withstands the blow but receives several damages. The villain curses the tank, telling him to get out of his way. With a dark aura, the enemy asks if he knows why he's called the White Wolf, and explains that the reason is that those who stood in his way were completely crushed by the White Wolf's fangs. With shock on his face, the uncle remains unresponsive. A large sword brutally strikes his back, spilling a lot of ketchup. The young man exclaims in agony, calling out for the knight's name. On his knees, he complains that it was a fatal blow and that it hurts a lot. Saying his goodbyes, he says that he'll go ahead. Shocked, the protagonist calls out for the knight again. The villain then points his sword, saying that he is next. With great anger, the hero grabs his sword, gathering a red aura around it. He then casts a dark look at the enemy while flames are created. Several status windows are activated, and a life-draining ability is used. Receiving enormous power, the boy says he will give his best to defeat him. With great fury, he charges forward, shouting. The two exchange a large number of blows in a short time. His life has been consumed by 10%, giving him 50% more strength and agility. While fighting furiously, his life is now consumed by 20%, doubling the previous stats. The enemy in his thoughts says that our boy seems to be getting stronger. At this moment, his HP is consumed by 30%, giving him an additional 150 status points. Shouting, the young man delivers a strong blow to the opponent. The enemy is then sent flying, hitting a pile of stones. At this moment, the protagonist calls out his name while showing signs of exhaustion. Responding, the villain says that it seems even immortals get irritated by the loss of a companion. Telling him to shut up, the boy charges forward while his status has already increased by 200. Furiously, the two clash their swords against each other. In a dark tone, the villain says that the hero's companion is immortal and can come back to life. And even if he was angry, he would never be able to understand the pain he himself felt. Striking endlessly, he says it was the pain of eternal separation. Our protagonist exclaims as he realizes the terrible situation he's in. At that moment, we see the enemy's level increase to 178 and 210, and finally 235. With hatred, he shouts, calling them immortal players, calling them outlaws. Staring at the hero, he says they don't deserve to set foot on this land, and says that their punishment will be the opposite of living. A strike is launched quickly, catching the boy off guard. Our boy suffers a serious wound to his shoulder, falling to the ground with a lot of strawberry juice spilling around him. The villain says that players aren't the masters of this world, so why do they try to take it? And with anger, he asks why they get to decide the fate of the people others love with their dirty hands. Someone shouts for the protagonist, saying they're coming to help, and we see Archer and Gilly running toward him. With a cold stare, the villain says those seem to be the ones he loves. He tries to shout for them to run, but the enemy makes a hand movement. With no time to react, Gale is brutally struck by the blade. The redhead screams in despair as her friend gushes ketchup. The villain tells the hero to feel the pain of watching his blade destroy his friends. Desperate, our boy begs the opponent to stop. At that moment, we see a new blade being formed behind the archer. Terrified as she screams that she won't be able to dodge it. Suddenly, asking to be excused, the white-cloaked mage saves the girl. The protagonist is shocked by the action and calls out the boy's name. Not understanding, the villain asks what's happening. After the strike, we see only the swords stuck in the ground, and the hero asks if they survived. On the battlefield, we see a fierce clash between both sides. A blow is delivered to the enemy griffin, making it spill strawberry juice. We see it was the elf who finished off the monster. Suddenly, she notices it has started to rain, saying that's a good thing. Alerted by something, she looks to the side. She then sees our boy grabbing the villain. The boy pleads, asking the opponent to stop immediately, and the other man simply responds by asking what he means by that, calling him a hypocrite and selfish, saying that the sadness immortal players feel in this world is all fake. Outraged, our guy asks what the man just said. Staring at him with a manic gaze, he says it's time to bring back everything they lost in this world. He explains that the one who ended his beloved's life is an immortal, just like the hero, and no matter how many times he defeats them, they always return. In a dark tone, he asks the protagonist if he knows what that person said, revealing that the killer of his beloved simply told him to get over it. Continuing the explanation, he says to the boy that maybe this is just a story. At that moment, we see the boy having a flashback, seeing friends talking about the game and asking if it would be fun. And reflecting, he's left speechless. Trying to apologize, he can't find the words. And in that moment, his ability is deactivated. The villain says that not all players are like that, but it's always them who commit these terrible acts and take no responsibility. As thunder strikes from the sky, his darkened face says that's what he wanted to fix, and that our boy had no right to stop him. Revealing that he won't be able to withstand his rage, he leaves the hero frozen. Thinking our guy reflects that the villain is right, but he can't back down now and has to give it his all. For the sake of the others fighting out there, and we see his companions and enemies on the battlefield. But even with his ability deactivated, he's the only one who can face him. And with resolve, he thinks he needs to stop him. Then the two charge toward each other, ready to cross swords once again. Our boy spots an opening. Leading in, he prepares a sword strike. The enemy asks if he really thought he had left an opening as his sword sprouts from the protagonist's back. Saying that his haste will be his death, he strikes at the shoulder. The young man is left with only 20% of his health, lamenting the high damage, wondering if this is the end with only 20% HP remaining. Coming to it, he hears someone calling his name. The elf shouts for him to hang on because she's on her way. Both the villain and the hero turn to face the girl, while the villain asks darkly if that's another immortal. And the protagonist looks terrified. He screams desperately, telling the elf to run away in that very instant. His enemy asks the woman if she knows this player. Without hesitation, she responds that she does. He then asks her if she would risk her only life for an immortal. The girl remains silent, looking straight ahead, and our boy pleads with her not to continue with this. With a smile, she proudly says yes because he is valuable. Even if the hero were like a god who never dies, she couldn't allow him to suffer. And that's why she would risk her life for the boy, whether he was immortal or not, saying that she cannot decide what the other will do because the choice is up to him. She then draws her sword and asks him to show his determination. With a dark look, a villain is impressed by the woman's courage. And at that moment, another sword strike unexpectedly comes from behind her. Our boy screams in distress upon seeing the scene. With a quick movement, he throws his sword to intercept the enemy. Both blades collide in midair, causing a shockwave. In disbelief, the opponent watches, and with anger in his eyes, he says that our guy keeps disturbing him. He then prepares to strike the fallen hero. With a glow in his hand, he shouts, "Sharma." We see a blade pierce something. At this moment, the villain with a frightened look groans, and we can finally see that he was the one hit by the blade. The rain falls at dusk over the battlefield. With that fatal blow, the hero thinks to himself that he has won. The villain, spitting ketchup, says that this isn't over and all he did was ignite the spark. His role might have ended there, but soon even greater flames would begin to burn. Finally, we see the villain fallen on the ground, lifeless. A cistern window appears indicating that the mission is complete and says it will begin the reward distribution. The hero then levels up continuously. The elf calls the boy, and he looks in her direction. Nervously, he asks what the hell she did. And crying, he asks what she would have done if she had died, while the woman explains that she had no choice. He then asks her never to do anything like that again while they hug. In the middle of the embrace, she says they should now pray for the villain. The protagonist looks aside and closes his eyes. Amidst the ring on the battlefield, he agrees. We are informed that the shocking story of Ledorn caused many changes in Circuit. In the Empire and neighboring countries, an anti-player alliance began to unite forces rapidly. These people joined to carry out Ledorn's will, and innocent players started to suffer because of it. Then the White Tower began identifying troll players, and the stigma magic was created and announced. The guild placed a bounty on each troll player identified using this magic, and both players and NPCs began hunting them. At this moment, the hero is seen looking at a floating window. We see people commenting on the flying ship and to whom it belonged. People didn't know if it was from a player or an NPC since it was too expensive for a player. This way, he could stay discreet and ask why they're discussing such a thing. It's revealed that our boy was shaken after the battle, but the elf helped him recover by inviting him to spend the holidays together. And she says they are heading to her hometown while the protagonist warns that he'll get ready. We see his imposing ship floating in the sky. Snapping his fingers, he prepares to cast a strengthening spell on the lower wall. An energy net appears, and a continuous flow comes from his hand. Shouting Charma, a sword appears, and in the other hand, a red energy shines. The sword that once belonged to the villain appears, and the hero thinks that he got this sword by defeating its holder. The sword that ended many of his friends, a legendary rank weapon with abnormal status. Inspecting the weapons, he happily says that he gained an activation skill thanks to the effect of the set. We see the effect of the two swords being activated, where he deals more damage to marked swords, and he thinks that the biggest advantage is being able to attack at a distance, but also increasing attack power is a good effect. He wonders how he can use it if he faces any problems. The two swords come flying back quickly in his direction. With a quick movement, he catches his first sword in midair. Then he locates the other sword. With effort, he catches it too. Happy with the result, he celebrates that he managed to do it. Suddenly, he exclaims, and without any apparent reason falls. Holding both swords while his body is on the ground, he feels frustration. Trying to get up quickly, the hero curses, saying he still can't control the swords, and says it can't be this way because it's far from enough. Remembering the battle, he thinks he can't rely on others to protect him and let them suffer because of it, and that from now on, he needs to get stronger or someday he'll lose everyone he loves. Then he yells that he will do whatever it takes. Opening the door, he ends his training, thinking it won't be easy, but that he can already control one of the swords. While stretching his shoulder, he senses someone's presence. The elf was waiting for him to come out, and he's surprised. She notices his clothes are torn and offers him a new set. Taking them in his arms, he asks if those are new clothes. A status window indicates it's a linen shirt from his Horus. She asks the protagonist to take a bath and wear it, since it's a traditional outfit from her hometown. He thanks her and says he'll be back soon. Holding the shirt, he remembers he needs to grow even stronger so he doesn't lose everything precious to him. Elsewhere, we see men in the shadows, and one asks if the material has been brought. Responding affirmatively, the other says he got it today. Observing the acquired item, the man delights in it, and holding it in his hands, asks if that's why they couldn't disable the circuit. The hero is impressed by something as he looks up. We see a gigantic and magnificent building with a caption saying, "Free City of Asharis." He exclaims, fascinated by the monument's size, and the woman replies that this is her hometown. In this place, the White Tower, the alchemists, and the Empire's henchmen all once conducted unrestricted experiments. After all those experiments, the land became barren. But then the elven sage Kaiser gave it his soul in exchange for blessings upon the land. And that's how Asharis became the free city it is today. Our boy asks why it's called a free city, and the woman replies it's because there are no rulers. Surprised, he asks if there are really no rulers, then who punishes the wrongdoers? She explains that in those cases, representatives of each race gather and carry out a trial. They are called the Elders of Asharis, and explains that this is how it works in the free city, where you can hear the most varied opinions from many races. Surprised, the protagonist reflects on that and recalls that not long ago this was just a game he was using to try to make a living. And that, because of fate, he had great luck finding valuable friends and going on hunts together. Going through all those steps to become a swordsman and set off on adventures. And he thinks it's fair to say that Lee, Kiho, and Mose have an unbreakable bond. Recalling the scene where he hugs the woman, he says he gave everything he had in the battle against Lydorn. The woman then calls his name. Asking what he was thinking, the boy says it was nothing serious. Then, excited, she grabs his hand and says they should get going as there are many places she wants to show him. Seeing the girl's smile, he says he promised himself that he will protect her. Elsewhere, we see a sign indicating the establishment is a tavern. 2 glasses are raised and people toast with beer. It's our couple saying this is amazing, very happy. A red-haired dwarf arrives behind them and asks if it's really her, greeting the elf. The girl happily returns the greeting, saying it's really been a long time. She introduces her friend Lorad and says he has the best ears in Asharis, and that he never forgets a sound once he hears it. We see the dwarf scratching his head in embarrassment. The protagonist says it's a pleasure and shakes his hand as the man greets him cheerfully. At that moment, the dwarf seems to notice something. Seeing the ring on the protagonist's hand, he asks if he's also a swordsman, wondering what's going on in Asharis. The elf then reveals that they're not here on business, but rather on vacation, and the man apologizes. Casually, she says it's fine, since swordsmen are always solving some problem. And the dwarf says he thought they had come to investigate that. Curious, she asks what he means. Asking her to take a look, he unwraps what looks like a black pill, and explains that it's a drug that can be absorbed through the skin, leaving both of them shocked. He also reveals that nowadays it's very easy to obtain in Asharis, and even kids can get it if they want. Thoughtfully, the elf asks if the drugs had been banned by the elders, and says it shouldn't be so easy to get something like that. The dwarf points out that, as she knows, many players went to this city, and it has grown a lot with the factories that were created. Everything was going very well, but in some tavern around there, this drug started to spread. Raising his finger, the dwarf was about to tell about the guys who are selling it, when suddenly a group of tough-looking men enters through the door. Everyone falls silent, and the girl calls the redhead, asking. Then the dwarf reveals that these are the guys selling the drug. Continuing, he says that they have a guild and run a huge potion factory where that drug is manufactured. Our hero observes the group of people carefully and concludes that they are indeed players. The elf asks what the name of their guild is, and the bearded man answers pickup artist, while we see outside of a castle. Inside, it looks like there is a party, a club-style gathering, and several people having fun. In another room of the castle, we see a closed office. The director of the establishment asks his subordinate what they have today, and the subordinate replies that they have 3 half-elves and 6 linfos. Exclaiming nervously, he asks if there are only 3 half-elves because he said he needed at least 5. His other subordinate tells him to calm down, and the boys today are apparently from the balloon side. Wondering, the boss then says they should eliminate them. Maliciously, he licks his lips, saying it will be that way. He informs that they will use them today and should ensure they pose no risks before bringing them in, while his underling agrees. The men hear a noise from outside and pay attention. The boss's partner asks if he's decided who will be used, and he replies that yes, but asks why. The man explains that he found a great girl in the tavern today. Informing that it was a half-elf who was with the player, the boss excitedly asks if there's a photo of her. Quickly, he pulls the photo from his pocket, and the other snatches it from his hand, ordering him to give it immediately. With a wicked smile, he says that's exactly what he wanted and that they should eliminate her. Looking at the photo, he orders his goons to go after her while laughing maliciously. The sunlight illuminates an old building under a clear sky, transmitting a calm and serene atmosphere. Someone delivers a bowl of root soup that increases all attributes and HP recovery for an hour. The protagonist asks if Ki made it all by herself, and she confirms. Happy, He takes a bite and says he will eat it all. The woman asks what he thinks of the food, and he responds saying that it's delicious and the best in the world. Excited, she says that today the hero will meet two of her friends, Asura and Farah. The little bearded man crashes through the door, calling for the two. Our boy urgently asks what happened, and we see that the elf was hit by the food he spat out. With a serious expression, the dwarf says it's an emergency, and they must go with him immediately. Outside a building, a horrifying scream can be heard. Doctors covered in ketchup ask what kind of infection that is, and if she ate something poisoned because no treatment is working. We hear another sharp scream while the two heroes watch in shock, and the girl calls for her friend Ashira. Our boy asks what's happening, while someone screams urgently to bring medicine, and another reveals that the one affected is Farah. With bruises and dark veins bulging all over her body, she screams desperately asking for medicine. Our hero notices some details while observing the woman and mentally wonders what those marks on her neck could be. The elf nervously asks the dwarf what that was and tells him to say something. Regretting, he says that some guys force her to use some kind of drug. Dark expressions take over the faces of the two heroes, and immediately our boy remembers the pickup artist group. Poor Farah can't stop screaming due to the immense pain. Furious, he thinks that it wasn't enough that they invaded the city and sold drugs, but they also forced innocent people to use them. The protagonist calls his partner, who has tears in her eyes, and determined, he informs her that he is seriously thinking about wiping out whoever did this. He says he will do everything in his power, and with suffering written on her face, the woman asks him to swear by the god Balika. Without hesitation, our boy immediately swears. At this time, the largest community in Circuit is discussing two incidents, the first being the discovery of the sacred treasure. The name of the treasure was the Eye of the New Humanity, the eye of a giant who was considered a great prophet in the past. A lot of attention was given to the treasure because it revealed the appearance of the players, and the second incident was the story of the new drug Venedic. If the drug was inhaled twice within 24 hours, the user would suffer poisoning accompanied by convulsions. The poisoning was strong enough to kill a person, and not even the best elixirs helped. Only a few high-level alchemists had learned a technique to deactivate the poisoning, but they charged a fortune, and those mages were very hard to find because they were extremely rare. The victims unfortunately had nowhere to turn and became slaves to the new drug. At this moment, we see the hero and his partner arriving in a certain place. He asks if this is the location the dwarf gave them, and his friend confirms. The bearded man says Shira and Farah were excited because they received an invitation from Troll Tongue, and they were thrilled because one of them would have a birthday soon and one of the best bards would be there. Regretfully, he cries, saying it's his fault and that he shouldn't have stopped them. With a deathly serious look, the elf thinks about the name Troll Tongue. Walking toward the castle, she thanks the boy for coming with her, and with a stern gaze, warns that she will do whatever it takes to take them down, even sell her own soul. The hero says he feels the same way, and there's no way to forgive them because they're just like Ladorn. In agreement, they both head toward the main entrance. At that moment, one of the guards stops the pair, asking them to wait, and informs them that entry is not allowed because a VIP guest has reserved the entire place for the day, adding that half-elves are an exception, and the woman could enter for free today, because that was the rule set by their VIP guest. The protagonist asks if he can enter as her companion, and the guard responds that it's none of his business. Staring him down, the guard says the protagonist is not a half-elf and should just leave peacefully, while our hero gets angry with the treatment and curses at the guard. The elf walks in without hesitation, surprising her partner. Trying to follow, he is stopped by the guard as he yells the woman's name. She simply replies not to worry, she'll see what things are like inside and shouldn't take long. Worried, he says that if anything happens to her, he squeezes his hand in anguish, unable to do anything but wait. Gently, the woman holds his hands to calm him and asks him to give her just 2 hours. If she doesn't return within 2 hours, he can do whatever he wants. Surprised, he repeats the woman's name, but then changes his expression to something more serious and stays silent. Right after, he accepts the deal and says he agrees. Then the elf bows and says that truth calls for the sword. Our hero returns the same gesture, repeating the phrase in turn. As she walks off, leaving our boy behind, she says she'll be back soon. At that moment, the doors close and the elf is no longer in sight. Sighing, he says he wants to turn the place upside down right now, but he'll wait as asked. We see the elf, beautiful as ever, entering the venue while the criminal watches her from behind. That night, the party was in full swing, with lights and music. Carefree, several people dance and enjoy the night. Among them, our elf walks through with a serious look, and mentally wonders where the people are who left Farah and Shira in that state. A stranger approaches, asking if she came to the place alone. We see that he's one of the dealers they had seen earlier, and he greets her. The woman immediately recognizes the scumbag but plays innocent, saying it's her first time there and that she came alone. Getting closer, the creep grabs her waist, saying they should chat a bit more. She feels unbearable rage and thinks she needs to rip the bastard in half, but knows it's not the right time. With a friendly look, she plays along with the man's conversation, and pretending everything is fine, she thanks him for the help while hiding her true intentions. Outside, we see the castle illuminated by party lights and loud music blasting from within. Our protagonist paces around aimlessly, worried about his girl. Suddenly, he looks to the side and calls out the woman's name. Worried, the hero asks if something happened and if she's okay, and she replies that aside from being half deaf from the noise, she's fine. Then she points behind her and says to interrogate that guy over there. The big-nosed guy is a total mess and yells, asking if they have any idea who they're messing with. Angrily and grunting, he asks if she knows all the influence he has in this city and if they think they'll get away with this situation. Our boy looks coldly at him without saying anything. Suddenly, a strike is delivered to the man's shoulder, causing him to scream in agony. Falling to the ground, he spits out ketchup and continues to scream in pain. The protagonist threatens, saying that from now on, he will answer all the questions or he will experience hell. In his thoughts, the bandit says that for now, he will cooperate. He apologizes and says that he won't do anything like that again, while the hero tells him to lift his head. Holding the drug in his hand, he asks if they are the ones who created it. Seeing the boy's blade ready to strike again, he becomes afraid. The hero threateningly says that he already knows everything, so it's better if he doesn't think of trying anything funny. The bandit reveals that the drug was created by a guy named Jason, and that he himself didn't know how to make it. The protagonist asks if Jason is also a player, and the bandit answers that yes, he's a level 57 alchemist who follows the orders of Director Shui. Our boy asks about Director Shui, and the big-nosed man responds that he is the CEO of NG Tech. At this moment, the elf says that this is one of the player-run companies the dwarf had informed her about. Banging his head on the ground, he says that he's already told them everything he knows, and if they catch him, they will also kill him, begging for mercy. He pleads that they don't end his life, but that only makes the woman more upset. Finally, she turns to the hero and says that she's already gotten the information she wanted, and that they should leave this vermin alone. The boy tells the villain to leave, and he wonders if he could really go. In his thoughts, he says that now that he's seen their faces, he can end their lives. Stopping in his tracks, the protagonist says that thinking about it, he's already made two main mistakes, and frighteningly, he stares at the villain, saying that this only makes him think he needs to teach him a lesson. After all, trash needs to be punished, doesn't it? With the full moon in the sky, we hear the big-nosed man's desperate screams. Meanwhile, in the castle, the party continues with loud music and lights. The leader of the bandits asks if his subordinate hasn't returned with what he sent him to find and complains that they're not fulfilling their duties. His other subordinate tells him not to get nervous and that he'll have what he wants soon enough. Throwing a drink in his subordinate's face, he says that he doesn't want to hear soon and wasn't asking him anything for him to respond. Asking the man if he had been sent to search as well, he warns that if the drugs run out, it will be the end for them. Slamming his hand on the table in frustration, he demands to know what everyone is doing there and that this should have been resolved yesterday. The man apologizes to the director and says he'll show him as quickly as possible while the boss orders him to get out of his sight. The leader grumbles as the man leaves with a sullen face. With hatred, he asks the other workers what they're still doing there. Threatening to throw the bottle of liquor, he asks if they still don't understand what's happening, even though they are members of the Pickup Artist Guild. Shouting, he tells them to get out of his sight. While drinking and cursing his underlings, he asks where his damn subordinate, the big-nosed man, is. Outside, we see someone muttering while thanking and repeatedly admitting they were wrong. The goons find the big-nosed man in a catatonic state, continuously repeating the phrase. His partner tells him to lift his head and tell them what happened, but there's no response. Then he pulls out a vial of purple liquid and pours it into his mouth. The bandit then awakens, and the other asks what happened. Relating what occurred, he says that a Dan elf and the player kidnapped him. Thinking to himself, the other underling wonders if they are the same people the director had talked about. Checking his watch, he says that not much time has passed, so they can't have gone far. Ordering his subordinates to call for reinforcements, he says they want to search every corner of the city, and that they will pay the price for messing with his gang. In a late afternoon sky, we see several houses on fire and people wounded in the streets. The hero, astonished, asks what's happening. Looking at the situation, he wonders why the village is in this state. Our boy, worried, wanting to know what happened, hears someone scream. He runs inside and meets the elf while she observes something. There was a message written on the wall saying that the dwarf had been kidnapped and they should go to the troll's tongue. Pondering, he realizes that the bandits found them and left the village in that condition. She says that this time she definitely cannot forgive them. And with rage in her eyes, she prays to her goddess for strength so she can destroy them. She calls the protagonist and the two head toward Troll Tongue. We see a presenter welcoming the players of Circuit. She documents the moment when the sacred artifact discovered by All Search will arrive. Outside a large building, she says that the artifact Eye of the New Humanity will soon reveal its powers. Suddenly, a tremor is felt by everyone, leaving them stunned. We are shown that the sacred artifact appeared on the roof of the building, and at that moment, they could witness its power in action. We see a dark sphere that shines intensely with a bluish hue. Suddenly, the sphere emits an even brighter glow, almost like an explosion. From afar, a blinding light can still be seen from the building. The surprised journalist wonders what that could be. She informs us that some symbols appeared in the sky and that she will read them aloud. I will go to the root of all that unfolds in this land. You will meet the greatest of all, for you came to this land. Several notification windows appear for everyone, indicating that from now on, fame points will be revealed for players, and there will be a ranking based on the number of points. Excited, people say they can finally see each player's fame points. Almost 43 million fame-related quests were found, and at the top of the fame ranking, leading by a massive margin, was Mose, our protagonist. Meanwhile, at Troll Tongue, someone wonders what's going on. A guard asks what this fame ranking is about. People discuss whether it has something to do with the much talked about sacred artifact, and that it now seems a new ranking exists. They look at the protagonist's point total and say he must be someone with way too much free time, while someone else asks if they'll be bringing a certain thing there. The boss asks when she'll arrive, and the lackey responds that she's already been sent and should arrive soon. He says that, however, she's pretty wild, so they'll have a lot of work to tame her. The boss says that's his specialty and that it's no fun if they're already obedient. He then orders them to bring her to him right away, just as they hear a sound and are caught off guard. At that moment, the protagonist couple enters the scene. They then face the enemies who did horrible things to their friends and acquaintances. The leader says they arrived quickly and shamelessly comments that the win is even better in person. Trembling, he says she's much better than he imagined and that he can't hold back anymore. He orders his lackeys to bring the girl to him. The man then introduces himself as Jason, master of the Pickup Arches Guild, and says they were just playing earlier with a few of their companions, and if they did something they couldn't handle, they'll have to learn to face the consequences. He orders that they bring only the girl alive, and the bandits rush in. One of the bandits then sees a status window saying that his guild has initiated a hostile relationship with Mose, and he thinks the name sounds familiar. With fear, he wonders if that's the person. The number one on the fan ranking, and at that moment, we see the protagonist charging up an attack with his two swords. With a serious look, he then activates his ability. In just an instant, the swords fly, slicing through all the enemies and taking them down. Terrified, he wonders why rank 1 would be in a place like this. Seeing his lackeys being massacred, he thinks he should run away, and concludes that he doesn't stand a chance against the number 1 ranked person. Before he can finish his thought, a sword flies toward him. He quickly activates a barrier ability, but the barrier isn't strong enough and shatters with a single strike. He's stunned that the barrier couldn't withstand even one hit from the protagonist. In disbelief as he looks at the item's status, he asks if it's a legendary item. While thinking this thing is on another level, the sword comes from behind and catches him off guard. Too late to regret messing with someone he shouldn't have, he is eliminated. Retrieving his weapons, the hero's ability levels up. Looking around, our boy searches for where Director Choi is. He's the only one left. Elsewhere in the castle, we see the villain running desperately and out of breath, and nervously says, "What is the number 1 in the famed rank doing in a rural area like this? And why did he dare to get involved with me?" Furiously stating that he is the CDO of NG Tech, he says he won't just stand there and get beaten. Activating the command in his car, he requests NG Tech's emergency security service. Desperate, he yells into the call, demanding that the entire security team be gathered immediately. He adds that he's on his way there, and if no one is there to help him, everyone is going to unlive. He arrives at the location out of breath, walking quickly. All of his subordinates lower their heads to greet him while he continues swearing. One of them asks why the director called everyone in the middle of the night. He then asks if the director is on drugs again, while another guy curses and tells him to shut up. The bearded man keeps questioning the director and says that if the president finds out, when the director cuts him off, cursing. He tells him to shut up and says he didn't come there to listen to his crap. The man informs him that the Information Guild has designated the Pickup Artist Guild as a removal target. Not caring about that, the director says the company is on the brink of collapse due to other factors, and that if they can't handle this, their business partners will perish. He orders the man to do whatever it takes to deal with the situation instead of bothering him there. As the director leaves the room, he tells them to open the door for him. Then we see a metal door opening with a loud screech. After that, the other man orders all the guards to block anyone from entering. Laughing as they hold the item, he says it was meant to be used only in moments like this, and not even the hero could handle it. A status window then shows that the item is a legendary type earring. The environment is silent as the couple arrives at the director's base. Someone orders them to stop right there. The guard says they can't go any further. The protagonist tells them to shut up and bring Choi over, and maybe then he'll spare their lives. A man looks at his subordinate and the scene in agreement. He then opens a suitcase full of money and asks to talk first. Convinced, the guard asks the hero what he thinks, saying that this wasn't a small amount of money before being interrupted. Furious, the woman yells that the bastard director got her friends addicted to drugs and this can't be solved with money. Sarcastically, the man asks if they have any proof of that, saying that without it, they can't do anything. He also questions if they think the company's image will be affected, but the hero says he doesn't care and demands to see the boss now. With a dark expression, the guard turns to the boy and asks what the kid wants, saying the director doesn't mess around with trash. The elf curses the thugs, calling them murderers, and the man brags that his eye has changed the world for the better. Coldly, our boy tells him to shut up and says if one more stupid thing is said, he'll smash the guy's face in. Mocking the couple, they say the two look too young and ask if their parents know what they're doing and if they're ready to deal with legal trouble. Threateningly, the guard says that one of Asura's adults is with them, and they have nothing to worry about, and that the hero should consider quitting the game for good. Drawing his flaming sword, he asks if that's all he had to say. The opponent is stunned when his status window appears before him. The window reads, Moses declared war on NG Tech, and their relationship has been changed to hostile. Laughing, the man mocks them, asking if the two of them alone were declaring war. Just as he's about to continue mocking them, one of his goons is violently struck. We see the half-elf obliterating the enemy squad. With a killer look, she swears by the sword god, and taking position, continues saying that all of them would perish in that place. She charges forward, wielding her sword with a metallic gleam. Two henchmen are struck from afar without even having time to react. As her sword returns from its arc, it's followed by a lot of strawberry juice. The protagonist then takes another step toward them. While staring into the boy's dark expression, the enemy becomes frightened and tells them to think carefully about what they're doing because they might regret it later. Without hesitation, the boy strikes him in the chest and says they're the ones who should regret the evil they've done, as the man falls, spraying red juice all over the ground. And with a serious look, he declares that the next time they log into the game, there will be nothing left in that place. Without mercy, the protagonist swings his sword. We only hear the sound that must have been the end of that man. Elsewhere on the property, someone makes a panting sound. We see director Choi wearing the earring with dissatisfaction while cursing. Then he says he'll have to get rid of the boy himself. And next to him, we can see the dwarf tied up. But that didn't matter now because all the evidence was there. As he lights the lighter, he says he could make everything disappear, and later claimed that the fire was caused by a player who entered the factory without permission, and that his infiltrator among the adults of Asura will take care of the entire investigation. Looking at the dwarf, he asks if he thinks something interesting is going to happen. At that moment, the protagonist and his girlfriend enter the room. With a tone of contempt, he asks who the two of them are. Looking at our boy, he recognizes him as the famous player Mose and asks what he came there for. Then he notices the woman beside him and turns to get a better look, asking her what kind of face is that, saying she looked very different yesterday, leaving her completely irritated. Unable to control her anger, she calls the Diverm and charges forward. With a strong glow, she infuses her sword and moves toward the enemy's neck. Letting out a chuckle, he says she's quite fast. And at that moment, it seems too late for her to notice what's happening. Praising her gear, the villain grabs her weapon with his bare hands, and she can't understand how. Swinging his sword, he says now it's his turn. The hero, wasting no time, also charges in to counterattack. At that moment, the man is launched after being caught off guard by the strike. He bounces several times across the floor before stopping. The duo keeps their swords in hand, focused on the fight. And the guy gets up, complaining that the two of them are damn bastards. With hatred, he shouts that they don't need to be afraid, and calls them to come at him. Trying several strikes, he wonders why he can't hit the protagonist. At that moment, the hero summons his two swords with a skill, and instantly drives them both into the enemy's body. He groans in pain while coughing up ketchup, thinking that not even his legendary item is enough. Our boy's woman wastes no time and charges with a quick thrust. A precise blow is executed, and she passes right through the enemy. His ear is surgically severed from his body, and holding the legendary class earring on the tip of her sword, she asks if that was what he was so confident in. Our boy declares that now it's over, and gives a deadly stare to the enemy, who lies on the ground bleeding ketchup from his ear. We see the Asura's Information Guild conducting an investigation at the sites destroyed by the incident. There were many acts of terrorism against users in Ash Village, the drug, and also the fire at the NG Tech factory. All of these incidents shocked the city's population, and because of this, the investigation with the Information Guild gathered all the adults of Asharis. But surprisingly, the protagonist and his woman were identified as the main suspects, and before the court, they said they still didn't understand what was going on. He declares that they were the ones who captured Director Shui, so why are they being investigated as suspects? But the woman calms him and says that nothing will happen to them. People say they first need to find the distribution channel for the drug. However, conflicts of interest arise, highlighting different priorities for each person. The judge slams his gavel on the table, asking everyone for silence, please, and declares that the leaf adult will now speak. The elder says that first of all, before deciding what to do, they had brought in those involved in the factory fire incident and would now hear their testimony. Starting with a question from the swamp adult. The blonde elf looks at the two from head to toe while pondering. As the protagonist watches his gaze, he begins questioning. Pointing a finger, he asks what connection the two have with the Pickup Artist Guild. The woman, not understanding the reason for the question, repeats it back, and the elf asks if they were the ones who caused the fire after receiving orders from the guild. He says he remembers that the two are also swordsmen. In the background, people whisper if they're talking about the Immortal Guild, and whether the two really are swordsmen. Our boy confirms that yes, they are swordsmen, and just as he's about to continue, he's interrupted. The man says that swordsmen usually take on confidential missions, so he asks if they were the ones tasked with setting fire to the factory. Angrily, the woman retorts that there's no way they would do such a thing. And the man counters that of course she would say that since it's a confidential mission. He then concludes that it makes sense both swordsmen received missions from the guild and set fire to the NG Tech factory, pointing at them. At that moment, the hero remembers that a guy named Director Park mentioned that one of the adults was on their side. So he wonders if the target in front of them is really the one. Shouting, the man says Frixo village was suddenly attacked and asks who was behind the assault. People say that all the witnesses confessed it was the pickup artist, while others agree with the claim. Then people start exclaiming nervously and begin blaming the two. Making several baseless accusations, they make the girl nervous, who asks everyone to listen to what she has to say. Convicted, she pleads for them not to insult the swordsman, since they would never accept such horrible missions. The elf laughs, saying swordsmen always claim confidentiality, but now that the problem's exposed, they think it's okay to deny everything. Articulating clearly, he says both are the main suspects, and despite unclear accusations, they keep denying because there's no evidence. He demands that they be handed over to the Barvid Tribunal, insisting they be sentenced to the medium spell prison. The hero realizes the atmosphere is strange as people keep accusing them with no grounds. Disturbed, he thinks everyone already sees them as criminals and wonders if there's any way out of this. A stranger appears from behind, asking if this isn't like the kind of trial where there's no evidence to convict. He continues saying he overheard a few things on the way and asks if they really think everything is so clear. He admits he came in a hurry because it was an important matter requiring a special investigator, but no proper investigation had been conducted. The bald man's name is Zyke, and he is level 211. The bald man introduces himself as the head of the Information Guild and says he reviewed the data on the incident and concluded the investigation must continue. He declares it's still too early to conclude anything and asks if there's any other reason for such a rushed judgment. The hero thinks that the bald guy quickly took control of the whole atmosphere and has an overwhelming presence. It reflects that this man's level and position in the Information Guild don't seem normal, so why is he helping? At this moment, someone shouts, asking the bald man what he's talking about. The nervous elf says they are guilty for defying Asaras and bangs the table furiously, saying there's nothing to discuss. The bald man then asks if he says that with proof, right? The man snaps back, asking if their class isn't proof enough, since they take on confidential missions. The bald man asks if the two are on vacation, and the woman confirms that they are, having recently finished a series of missions. He then asks why they were at the scene when the fire broke out. She explains that a recent incident involving the company injured one of her closest friends. That's why she began an independent investigation into Dogra. She reveals the result, stating that NG Tech was supporting the Pickup Artist Guild, so she went to confront Choi, who was guilty of everything. We see a flashback of the building on fire while she reveals she only found out about the fire afterward. The other guy asks where her evidence is, and she says everything was burned in the fire. The arrogant elf laughs, saying there's no way they had any proof because it was all made up. And the bald man, calling him a blabbermouth, asks if he couldn't just shut up, leaving the man completely embarrassed. Continuing, he says this incident was very serious and they can't make hasty judgments, so they need to investigate the two further. He reveals he approached the special investigator because the adults had requested it, but no actual investigation had been done on the case. He states that now everything must start from the beginning and asks if everyone understands. The people agree with his point of view and decide to believe in that for now. A man orders both of them to go immediately to the Azharis Information Guild, and the two react with surprise exclamations. Suddenly, someone from outside shouts for everyone to wait. The couple smiles in surprise at the person now present. With his torn boots, the figure asks once again for a moment and introduces himself as Lord, a citizen of the village who was kidnapped by Shui, director of NG Tech. The little bearded man reveals that he brought concrete evidence about the incident to the chief investigator. The couple, surprised, repeats the dwarf's words in their minds. We see him with a determined look, ready to reveal the whole situation. The people present cause a commotion, asking if there really is any evidence. The elf angrily asks what he is talking about and what kind of evidence he brought after arriving so late. As the dwarf adjusts himself, the man says they already reached a plausible conclusion, trying to cover up the case. The little man then lifts his shirt, revealing a mark on his neck. The bald man, surprised, exclaims that it must be a memory crystal. So apparently the dwarf was a vocalist, and he confirms that he was known for his achievements in the Long Bass Tribe War and reveals he implanted a memory crystal to work as an informant. He then touches the mark on his neck, which emits a strong blue glow. A recording is then heard saying that all evidence will be erased, and the couple is shocked by the voice. It belongs to the director of NG Tech. People listen as he explains his plan and says the investigation will be focused on the cause of the fire and that one of the elders of Azharis is on their side. Everyone looks shocked by the recording obtained. The elf slams the table, asking what is this, unable to believe what he's hearing. To his surprise, the recording reveals that the man mentioned him, saying that the elder of the swamps will handle the investigation. Everyone looks at the elf in shock as the secret has now been revealed, and the dwarf concludes by saying that he was kidnapped by NG Tech, and this was the recorded proof from that time. He reveals that they kidnapped him to get revenge on his friends who had started investigating who was behind the drug production. And he says that if he hadn't gotten free and escaped the ropes, he would have died in the fire started by Shui. At that, we see the elf completely terrified by the testimony. The bald man then declares that things won't end like this. With a terrifying aura, he asks how they dare mock the special investigator and defile his beautiful city. The elf, wetting himself in fear, is left speechless. In just an instant, the man jumps and lands in front of him, catching him off guard. He begins to list the numbers minus 52,000 victims of addiction, nearly 400,000 other potential cases, and 110 confirmed deaths with the possibility of more. Glaring, he asks the elder if he has become an accomplice to this terrible crime. Getting closer, he says he will do everything in his power to make sure the elder is sentenced to the same prison he would have sent the protagonist to. He shouts that all guilds and people involved in the incident will be incriminated alongside him. Then, turning around with a terrifying look, he stares at the couple. The boy and the elf look completely stunned, but then the bald man smiles, easing the tension in the air. Stepping down from the table, he apologizes for his behavior and for almost not recognizing the true heroes of Asharis. He coughs, clearing his throat before continuing. In a loud tone, he announces that he, the Platinum Chief of the Information Guild as a special investigator, is closing the case, and that the problem had been caused by the distribution and production of drugs by NG Tech and the Pickup Artist Guild. He ends by stating that the elf's testimony has been proven true based on the evidence from the kidnapping victim, and announces that the greatest contributors to this case are the swordsman, meaning the protagonist, and the elf. A glow appears beneath the hero, surprising him. Suddenly, multiple cistern windows appear, informing him that he has leveled up. Not only that, but he also receives the title Savior of Asharis, which grants various attributes and fame points. The young man is surprised by the number of attributes received from this title. It's the same as a unique rank item. Happy, he thinks that the result of completing such a quest chain was truly amazing. After the entire incident, an article was posted in the Incidents and Accidents tab of the game community. We see the article titled The Dark Side of NG Tech. Currently, the article had over 200 million views. There were rumors going around that the protagonist was ranked #1 and known as the owner of the flying ship. People discussed all sorts of crazy theories about the protagonist on the forum. The article caused such a stir that it overloaded the server and ended up being deleted by the moderator. In a busy plaza, someone says, "Thank you, everyone." It's the hero expressing his gratitude, saying that everyone had always been great to him and even now came to say goodbye. The elder says that they should be the ones to thank and that there's not much more they can do, just this for now. The man with regret says they treated him badly despite everything he did to help them, and that it was a stupid mistake by the elders of Asharis. Then, as an apology, the elders would like to give him a gift. Holding a box, she says this is something only the elders have had since ancient times, and although it was once in the possession of the corrupt elder from the swamps, the sanctity of the item should still be intact. She reveals a stone in the middle of the box. A window identifies it as a unique magical stone, informing that using the stone will transport the user to a specific location. The hero exclaims in his thoughts about it being a portal stone and wonders if he can really keep something so valuable. The elders agree, saying it's a small gift compared to the salvation he brought to the city. The protagonist simply lowers his head, holding the gift while he thanks them. The people wish him a great journey and ask him to take care of himself. We see his giant flying ship as it sets off to depart. Our couple looks out the window, waving cheerfully to the villagers. The elf looks at our hero affectionately as he gazes at the horizon and asks where they will go next. We then see a scene where one man, armed, confronts another, asking why he would do this. Suddenly, ketchup is dumped, and we hear a cry of pain. One man holds his sword, dripping with thick red juice, while he is called Master. The two bow respectfully, saying they answer to the call of the Master. Holding a sign, the man says this must be the immortal who became a swordsman, while his lackeys confirm. Leaving a pile of bodies behind, he says there's a lot to settle. A red-haired character is trapped and fears that Sharon is in the same situation. He didn't imagine they would go so far, manipulating the teleportation to send them to the White Tower. The young man then wonders if anyone will be able to find them. Next, the scene changes to Mose, who is urgently called by Kiho. The girl asks about the fate of their journey, which surprises him. He mentions his friend Sharon, who disappeared along with a mage. The young man believes she's still alive but can't locate her, so he concludes that he needs to go to the city of Tigris. Tigris is introduced as a famous city with a vibrant nightlife and charming appearance. However, there is an evident contrast as both misery and wealth share the same space. The city is also known for its gambling. Mo saves the coordinates for the Tigris pier and observes the chaos with ships everywhere and people confused. With Kiho, he enters a gaming area with several slot machines but becomes frustrated, having lost all his coins again. A clerk convinces him to try once more before leaving. The friends walk through streets full of betting machines. The girl comments that Lauren had warned them about this aspect of the city. She says she learned that Tigris is a city where hope and despair live side by side. Fosh, a cute rabbit-like guide, appears and offers information about the machines. He explains that a rare token called Ormicon can be obtained from a single machine among many. The cash prize also attracts many players. Mose and Kiho hesitate but decide to buy 10 coins to try their luck. The swordswoman notices that Linfi children are being exploited in this betting environment. She then recalls her childhood as a half-elf child, being forced to work from a young age. Fosh returns with the coins and hands them to the adventurers. Before he leaves, Mose calls him and offers a gift as thanks for his kindness. Surprised by the gesture, the guide is touched to receive the coin. The boy emphasizes the extra value of the coin and recommends Fosh only use it in extreme need. Still moved, the fluffy guide thanks deeply and says he'll use the coin to pay for his brother's hospital. He then lovingly bids farewell to the adventurers, wishing them a safe journey. Excited, Mose and Ki decide to head to the machines and try their luck. Next, they realize they've lost the coins. Despite this, they remain calm and move forward. The duo reaches their next destination, the Tigris Information Guild. They are greeted by a clerk who confirms the swordsman's identity and directs them to the guild's leader. Through a teleportation spell, the two are transported to a noble room where the meeting with the leader will take place. The man introduces himself as Varence, the head of gold of the Tigris Information Guild. He starts the conversation by asking if the young ones are looking for someone. Mose confirms, revealing that they are looking for an immortal mage and an archer. Varence reflects on the description and remembers someone with similar traits who appeared recently. He reveals the name of the player. It's the mage Kellyan. The revelation surprises Mose and Kia. The noble explains that the White Tower doesn't accept players, but Kellyan managed to trick the system by abandoning his player identity. Pretending to be an official member, he infiltrated perfectly and became a mage, completing the White Tower's training. Varence reveals that Kellyan is hated by many, and Mose becomes worried that he might have been hurt or even killed by someone. The guildmaster says he can track the wanted mage, but states the adventurers must first fulfill a task. Mose and Kia react with surprise. The girl argues that such information should be free for swordsmen. Varence explains that the type of information they seek is rare and valuable, and therefore has a price. The swordsman, on the other hand, shows willingness to pay the price, ready to hear what needs to be done. According to the noble, on Mount Malik, there are ancient ruins called the Path of All Lives. That is where the mission will take place. The pair's task is to eliminate the wanderers that appear in the ruins. Varence, the gold chief of the Information Guild, informs the swordsman that he won't need magic to defeat the targets. He just needs to give his best and use physical attacks, as all preparations have already been made. Leaving the guild building, the protagonist wonders why the master would charge such a high price for information. He is willing to fulfill the condition and urges her traveling companion to move. However, Mose suggests they forget the task given by Varence and focus on completing their quests as swordsmen. The elf gives Mose a reality check, reminding him that even if he doesn't know the mage, Sharon is his friend, and he should care about her. The swordsman realizes he was acting only as a player, not as a real person. He acknowledges that over time, the distance between his real self, Lee Kiho, and the character Mose has been growing smaller. Ki says she believed that, unlike other players, the swordsman cared about people. The girl fears he might end up abandoning the problems they need to face. Her wish is for her friend to remain the same Mose as always. The hero looks serious and apologizes to the young woman, agreeing that Sharon is his friend and he must save her. He holds Ki's hand, thanks the half-elf for the reminder, and promises never to change who he is. Hand in hand, the pair continues their journey. While walking through the city, the companions are surprised to find Fosh alone. Ki approaches and asks why he hasn't gone home yet when she notices the little one is hurt. She picks him up and asks what happened to leave him in such a state. Looking concerned, Mose also wants to know what happened and who hurt the furry guide so badly. Fosh hesitates but eventually answers that the gold coin the adventurers gave him was taken by shymen. The little one explained that the coin had been a gift, but the man only replied that swordsmen were thieves who would serve as food for the wanderers of the Path of All Lives. Upon hearing the name of the place, Mose and Kia are greatly surprised. Guards are stationed in front of a huge gate as Mose and Kia hide in the bushes. The dark-haired man asks if that is Shriaman's house, and the elf confirms that all signs point to yes. Determined, the protagonist says he doesn't care if the house has guards. Inside the house, Shriaman wonders if it's possible to find trustworthy people who don't die quickly. Holding a skyrod in his hand, he walks down the stairs, saying aloud that he got the position of Gold Chief thanks to the Cat Society. He says he'll need to spread the news that he has 10 Ormicon tokens so more people start betting. He also adds that he'll finish off whoever he needs to in order to make sure everyone understands they can't rob him. Mose and Kie were hiding under the stairs and heard everything. The girl stands up to reveal herself to the homeowner, but the protagonist tries to stop her, as that wasn't the plan. At that moment, Shraven hears them and asks how they got into the house, but Kie punches him in the face. Screaming in pain, the older man calls for the guards, but the elf informs him that they've all already been defeated. She continues, saying she'll send him to the hospital too, and Mose decides not to get involved in the chaos to avoid getting hit. Later, Kie apologizes to her friend, saying she was just venting her anger, and that she's now ready to talk to the house owner. The adventurers ask what has been happening on the olive path. Shraman seems like he won't answer, but the girl threatens to throw an object at him. Mose asks her not to finish off the host. The man with the mustache says there's an agreement. The aristocrats created the Silver Cat Society and hired a necromancer to help them. Then the Dark Wizard chose a wanderer for the olive path, attracting immortals and mercenaries willing to fight him. But everyone who entered the battle died within minutes, with many people betting on these fights, giving money to the society. Kie is outraged, asking how many people have been sacrificed because of this betting system. Seeing the girl's reaction, Mose tries to calm her down so they can hear the whole story. Shreyaman says that the next day, things will be different because a powerful immortal will face the Wanderer. The protagonist asks if the information was given by the head of the Information Guild and realizes that this was Virence's plan all along. Ki is angry that someone in the position of the guild leader is involved with the Silver Cats and believes people like the Mustache Man need to be eradicated. Meanwhile, the man cries for mercy. Mose tells his friend not to dirty her hands with that man as they've already gotten what they wanted from him. Besides, they can spread the news that the Ormicon tokens are fake so that Shreyaman can be brought to justice. The swordswoman shakes the man, still wanting to vent her anger, but decides to let it go. The companions leave to complete their mission, and Mose says Virence will regret involving him in the conspiracy. The All Tree is the library of Asura created by the elders to rescue the lost history of the place. The place is secret and can only be accessed by a portal stone made of fir wood. Mose examines a fir wood stone while thinking about the time remaining to reach the olive path. He calls Ki to accompany him to the All Tree, but she says the portal stone is his, granted by the Elder of Leaves. However, she asks the young man to search for a book about the Bard of Kafera. The portal is activated and Mose reappears in the city's library. Immediately, a message appears informing that the protagonist has received a new mission, the blacksmith Laboger's diary. The mission is to find the 11 swords forged by Laboger, a talented half-elf who was persecuted and discriminated against. The first step is to find the diary. Mose realizes that this was the blacksmith who created Sharma and Korma, and that the diary might help him find the other swords. Excited about the task, he is ready to begin, but doesn't know how. Then he remembers that he is at the All Tree and starts researching. Since there is no device like Alexa in the game, the search will have to be done manually. The young man becomes desperate because there are thousands of books and he will have to go through them all to find something about Laboger's diary. He picks a shelf and grabs a book, which surprisingly is the blacksmith's diary. This unlocks the mission to find the 7th sword called the Engraved Burma Sword. Soon after, 5 new search missions are unlocked, surprising the young adventurer. Finally, another task appears, which is to find the engraved Zerma sword on the olive path. This one has a much higher difficulty level than the previous tasks. Mose is impressed by the coincidence since he and Kiho were already about to go to the ruins anyway. Determined, he feels everything's falling into place in his journey and decides to continue searching for the book his friend asked for. On returning from the All Tree library, Mose finds the half-elf sleeping on a sofa. He wonders why she didn't go to bed, which would be more comfortable. Sitting beside the girl, watching her face as she rests, the swordsman has the realization that he loves her. However, the fact that he is divided between the real world and the game world makes him insecure about his feelings. While he thinks whether he should tell the truth about his love, he wakes up. She asks how long she's been asleep. Mose doesn't confess his feelings and simply answers that he just arrived. The protagonist hands the book to his adventuring companion and is pleased with her happiness upon receiving the object. Touched, she thanks him and says she's happy to be his friend. With the arrival of dusk, the swordsmen decide to begin their journey. In a dark scene, a narrator announces that the character Mose was attacked by the evil spirit, leaving him badly injured. The protagonist is in the middle of a battle while he watches, nervous. One of the members' voices says that even the swordsman's great skills are no match for the masterpiece of the Cat Society. However, apparently Mose is losing on purpose and reflects that he only needs to let his opponent hit him one more time. It is nighttime when the young adventurers arrive at a party hosted by the Silver Cat Society. Virence, who is at the entrance, only allows people wearing cat masks to enter. The plan is to find costumes to get in, and then the girl must blend in with the other members and bet 100 tokens on her friend. She is surprised as they have no money, but the dark-haired one has a way to guarantee his victory. At the party, Mose is welcomed by Virence, but he will have to wait his turn since there are other challengers present. Ki is seated in an amphitheater with the rest of the audience. Virence is the host and gives the introduction to the games. He presents the undefeated champion with 31 victories, the evil spirit of sleep. A black knight with glowing blue armor, thick chains on his arms, and a powerful sword appears. According to Virence, this spirit is the most powerful ever created by the Cat Society. The second challenger is the Great Archer, who specialized in archery at the Black Tower. Watching from afar, Mose realizes that the other challenger is also a circuit player, probably looking for money. Right at the start of the battle, the spirit easily blocks all of the archer's attacks and uses his special move to defeat him. The sword, which was forged by Laboger, floats over the Black Knight's hand and crashes down on the archer, defeating him instantly. The entire crowd erupts, laughing at the Great Archer's naivety and thinking he could defeat the evil spirit of sleep. Virence announces the grand challenger of the night, the immortal swordsman Mose. The protagonist throws his cloak aside and enters the arena with determination. Many in the audience express surprise at a swordsman participating in such a fight. Most assume the boy is there for money, but that no one will bet on him. Until Ki stands up and places her 100 token bet. Everyone, including Virence, looks shocked. From the arena, Mose smiles at his companion. The masked young woman announces that she will bet 100 Ormicon tokens on the challenger, causing the others to think she's just a newbie due to such a bold bet. The announcer laughs and says someone seems to have guts, and immediately starts the battle. With a dark look, the protagonist's opponent strikes first, while Kiho uses his ability to control his swords to block the attack from a distance. Surprised, the announcer comments that this levitation skill is amazing to watch. The boy's two swords fly toward the spirit, but the spirit vanishes like smoke before everyone's eyes, reappearing like magic right behind Mo's, landing a surprise strike. Our boy realizes that physical attacks don't work on his opponent and that he only survived thanks to the Varabander and Earring's ability. Without hesitation, the spirit attacks again, determined to win. The protagonist resumes commanding his two swords, which merely ricochet off the enemy again and again. Reflecting to himself, the boy concludes that only Sharma and Korma can handle Zherma, who is capable of long-range attacks. However, due to the sword's firing nature, pushing is its primary trajectory, as his swords can only take a defensive stance. So he chooses to use the ability Ruin of Fortune used by Lero, who managed to win the favor of so many players through relics. But to do so, he first needs to touch the target directly with his hands. Smiling wickedly, the announcer asks how this could happen to the swordsman Mose, saying he feels bad for anyone who bet money on the boy. Determined, the protagonist charges forward to carry out his plan to touch Zherma, not the evil spirit. He launches his swords again, and his opponent reacts by using the one in hand, which fires at high speed and breaks through the defense, striking our boy repeatedly, sending strawberry juice flying everywhere. The girl who bet on the boy is shocked by the scene, while the evil spirit raises his arm in victory, still controlling Zherma, who attacks the young man again. Kiho thinks the only way to stop the sword is to use his own body, and he lets himself be hit once more, so he can grab the weapon with his hand and use the Ruin of Fortune ability successfully. A huge burst of light occurs, leaving all spectators in awe. As the dust begins to settle, we see the protagonist, while the evil spirit begins to fade, thanking him for the release. All that remains is the creature's core, now in Moses' hands. Raising the orb high, he smiles, happy with the victory. Jaw dropped, the announcer says that result is incredible, considering the boy's opponent had won 31 times in a row. Enraged, those who bet on the evil spirit begin to lament the money they lost, except for the young woman who bet everything on Mose, who will win 231 tokens alone. Thinking to himself, the masked announcer reveals that he wasn't expecting to pay such a large amount of money to anyone. A little later, he finds out that the person who took the prize wasn't a member of his group, which means he will never see the tokens again as was originally planned, to his complete misfortune. Elsewhere, the young woman who won the money hands it over to someone, all happy. The someone is Kiho, who smiles as he grabs the bag. Curious, the elf asks what kind of magic the young man used to win, but he says it was just a stroke of luck, since if the ability hadn't worked, he would have lost. Excited, the girl asks if her friend wants to go out and play some slot machines, since he has such luck. However, Mo states that he never wants to bet again. We find out that after discovering the corruption caused by Simon and Virons, the Tigris Guild placed a reward. This would be given to whoever found Virons, who disappeared the day after the Olive Path incident. However, the large Silver Cats organization was not investigated, as it had complicated relations with high-ranking individuals. Given the reward and the loss of the organization's funds, something made the protagonist think that the mercenaries weren't the only ones after Virons. Meanwhile, at the Tigris Guild headquarters, someone says they heard that the resolution of the problem on the coin streets was a success. Introducing himself, the creature says his name is Leiran, and that he is the head of gold at the guild. He then asks what Kiho and the elf want to know. Responding, the young man says he is looking for a male wizard and a female archer who are immortals. Since an immortal mage is a rare thing, Leiran says he's right and that he knows a specific individual who is quite famous. This person was last located inside the White Tower after using a coordinate-shifting magic instance, which is forbidden. Worried, the young man asks if this means the people he's looking for were kidnapped during the teleportation. The creature says that if the responsible party used telope with malicious intentions, it could be the case, but that both are likely still alive. Meanwhile, inside the White Tower, someone asks if they should initiate the plan, and another person orders that it not be rushed. We see a trio of young men observing the disappeared mage who is tied up. The leader of the group asks if he has regained consciousness after noticing his eyes open. We find out that before everything happened, the mage was teleporting to one of the spatial crystals in Toika. However, he ended up in a completely different place, and by the time he realized it, it was already too late. Looking at Hosfoy, he says that it's not too late to stop and that he will overlook the fact that the young man used telope if he is set free. But this only serves to irritate the young man. Without hesitation, he attacks the mage again, making him scream in pain multiple times. With a dark look, the enemy young man says that his prisoner still doesn't understand the situation and that he admires the prisoner's pride, attacking again mercilessly, while smiling wickedly, showing pleasure as he hurts the young man. Another member of the trio warns that Hosfoy can outdrive the mage around, but Hosfoy calls him a fool as the young man is immortal, Severely injured, the young man can only think about how Sharon will be in danger if he doesn't break free. Deciding to grab the attention of Vale and Hargan, he asks them if they are really afraid he will die, even after they did everything to reach him with the worthless talent they have. Provoking, the mage says it was only luck that he got good grades and that they were from the same class. But just because he's a player, the two are doing this, something they should be deeply ashamed of. Giving a small smile, Hosvoy says that the young man still has a sharp tongue. It then states that it was because of the mage that they lost a year after being discovered by the supervisor. But if the supervisors knew the young man was a player, they wouldn't have allowed him to become what he is today. Thus, his very existence sullied the name of the White Tower. Stopping the assault a little, the young man says that now he will talk a bit about his plans, which consists, first, in taking care of the archer. Furious, the mage says that she has nothing to do with this, but Hosvoy asserts that, judging by the reaction, he's lying, revealing that he will perform horrible experiments on the girl, including using her as a puppet to fight against Homunculi, which will help him greatly in his graduation. As for the boy, he will play a fundamental role and help him become an advanced mage. Calling his minions, Hosvoy orders both of them to bring the thing over. The mage's eyes widen when he sees it. A kaleidoscope of Daklimath, a legendary rank instrument forbidden to be used under any circumstance, being brought in. The blonde boy says it will be the key to opening the portal to another dimension, but no one really knows what happens in the process. Thus, he is taking the first step into an unknown realm of knowledge. A message appears announcing that the hidden quest called Existence of Cerulean has been activated. We find out that Lundaburun, located in Asparagan, is like the sacred land of mages due to the White Tower. We see that Kiho and Kia have just arrived in front of the building, which shines brightly under the sunlight. The young woman says she wonders if it's because the city is called the City of Mages that it has so many magical facilities. Then she asks what those circles around the fountain are. The protagonist notices that people who step into the center of the figures disappear. Suddenly, someone approaches and says those are gateways. Startled, our boy jumps back. His ally does the same, apologizing. The boy says he heard that many people are having trouble finding the Lundaburun Guild. That's why he was sent personally by the organization. Introducing himself, he says his name is Zaire, the Inquisitor, and he is there to guide the two of them to the Information Guild. Intrigued, the pair thinks the boy is almost as strong as Lidorn. Kiho then asks why they should believe that Zaire is really from the place he claims. The boy apologizes again, admitting he acted hastily because he is still learning. Showing a bit of his power, he says he was provided by the White Tower to the guild and is, in fact, a homunculus. That's why he has that tattoo on his face. Curious, our boy asks if the guy is like an android. Smiling, he confirms and reveals that it's not easy to create creatures like him, something only the mages of the White Tower can do. We learn that since the city was created by mages, all its facilities use magical efficiency, like the serpents on the ground, which work as gateways made of giant spatial crystals planted beneath the city. Given the explanation, Zaire asks if the pair now trusts him a bit more, and then says they can walk through the passages. Kiho and Kia agree to the proposal and step into one of the circles along with the guide. They soon arrive at the Information Guild of Lundaburun. The guide says they may now enter, as the gold head of the place is expecting them. Inside a room in the building, there the gold head says it seems the mage and the archer were indeed teleported into the White Tower. Our boy then asks if there's a way to enter the place, but the creature says no, since the guild cannot intervene as the tower is the mage's property. Zaire says it's the same concept as the sanctuaries for swordsmen. The gold head of the guild then says the only way to enter the tower is by passing the mage's test, so he really cannot help. Apologizing, the creature walks to the window. Joining the conversation, the guide states there may be another way, because there is nothing that can't be done with money, so it's just a matter of hiring a mage to enter the tower. Intrigued, the protagonist asks why the gold head of the guild didn't mention that. Zaire replies that it's because invading a mage's domain officially is somewhat problematic. That's why he is there to offer help unofficially. Holding his fear, the android contacts Mr. Leiden, saying he would like to ask a favor, which consists of finding a mage in need of money. On the other end, the man tells him to go to the southeast post. Zaire then says he'll be there soon, and promptly informs the pair that they need to leave. The trio returns near the White Tower. Explaining, the guide says they are walking because the destination is outside the reach of the spatial crystals. Suddenly, someone yelling that players must be expelled catches everyone's attention. Quickly, the android asks the pair to excuse him. We see people with signs and raised hands shouting that the world belongs to them, and that players must be expelled immediately. Approaching, Zaire says that those are the lid telephone, leaving Kiho speechless. The guide then says that the size of the lid tel, who succeeded the ideals of Lidorn, has been growing at an accelerated pace. And according to information collected by the Information Guild, there are approximately 3 million people who have recently joined the group made up of tens of millions of members. Zaire says that since Mose was the one who defeated Lidorn, it's better for him to cover his face while they navigate through the crowd, which continues to shout non-stop. The trio heads in another direction through the streets. Worried, he asks if the protagonist is okay, and he says yes, just a little nauseous. Zaire stops and picks up his blue sphere again. calling out to Liden, who answers urgently saying that a strange person visited the Information Guild. Self-proclaiming themselves as the master of Lozven, the man nervously asks why he's in the city. Something starts to happen, leaving the android and the duo nervous. A different voice starts coming from the sphere, announcing that it is looking for the two swordsmen of Asparagon, whose names are Mose and Kia. The call ends shortly after, without further explanation. Zare turns to the duo and asks why someone like the Master of Lozven is looking for them, and if they are breaking any swordsman rules, shouting. Mose vehemently denies it. He explains that if they had broken the rules, their own master would have come. She then warns the protagonist that they need to return to Asparagon urgently and find out what is happening. Our boy asks if Zare plans to hand them over, but he says no, because his mission was to help them reach their goal as quickly as possible, besides the fact that he trusts them more than the ones responsible for the guild attack. So the three of them must hurry and move through the passage. Suddenly, something catches the elf's attention, causing everyone to look back curious. We see that the tower started to glow, turning the entire sky purple. Running, the guide shouts, warning them to hurry, before it's too late. In the city, people are running to save themselves from the fire that is spreading uncontrollably. Right in the center of it all, someone with black boots begins to approach, catching Kiho's attention, who is also arriving. Standing in the middle of the way, a dark man with an eye patch and black clothes says he has finally found him. Confused, our boy asks who the man is, who silently picks up a ruin. Containing a moon engraved, the stone starts to glow and opens two portals, from which two young men emerge. They introduce themselves as Azura and Larif, servants of Lozven. Hearing this leaves Kie in complete shock, as she realizes it is the same man she heard through the crystal ball. With a dark look, the master says that he has kept silent for too long about the sanctuary of Asparagon, and that he understands Kiho, the one who became a hero among the players after defeating Lidorn. But even though the prince was a foolish young man, he had a noble sense of purpose, since he spread the idea that players were cancerous beings for that world. That's why the swordsman of Lozven made the firm decision to end the duo. He draws her sword and asks if the trio knows what their actions imply. But one of the young men crushes his own swordsman ring while asking what she means by actions, then asserting that it was she who ignored the fact that players are killing people as if it were a game, besides eliminating a companion just for breaking silly rules and then accepting a player in their place. The other young man then says that during this time, they endured many things, keeping secrets about missions and following the rules, since they were the guardians who maintained the balance of the world. But Ki made the one who disturbed this balance one of them. Shouting, the young woman asks if they have any idea how shameful that is, then ordering both of them to stop insulting Asparagon. However, the master of Lozven only says that he doesn't know if that's insulting or factual, since it will be decided by whoever survives the battle. Without hesitation, the man charges at Mose with his large sword, forcing the young man to invoke a Toria quickly, to block the attack and avoid being hit. But to his misfortune, something takes him by surprise, leaving Kia very worried about the situation. When the young woman turns forward, she sees one of the swordsmen ready to attack her with his sword technique called the First Form, beginning a series of impressive strikes, from which by a hair's breadth, the young woman barely manages to escape. Smiling, the boy affirms that it's not over yet, and without mercy, he launches an aura shot, which only doesn't hit Ki thanks to Zare, who stepped in front and activated a magical shield. Irritated, the man asks who the young guy with the glowing blue eye is. His companion then tells him to fall back. He follows by launching an attack that makes sharp thorns sprout from the ground. Zare is grazed in the eye, and the duo quickly rushes over to check if the android is okay. He says he is, and asks the two to pay close attention to what he's about to say. He then states that the three of them should be able to handle the two swordsmen, but no matter what they do, nothing can stop the master of Lozven. Activating his power, he says that his eyes can control the enemy for a short period of time. So if successful, they might get a chance to escape. But it will take 3 minutes to activate his ability, since one of his eyes was damaged. So during that time, the plan is to keep the man away from the portal, so that once everything is ready, they can run to their destination freely. He asks if 5 seconds are really enough, and Zare says it's the only chance they have. Approaching, the master of Lozven says that the latest homunculus model is truly formidable. He then states that the White Tower hasn't been wasting its time. Kiho becomes alert again after something catches his attention. We see that the tower, which continues to emit a strong light, has also started projecting a circle similar to the ones on the ground. Intrigued, our boy asks if that's the work of the man with the eye patch, but he denies it, saying he doesn't know anything, and that anyone can tell it's the work of a player since everything started going wrong ever since they arrived. The protagonist asks why the enemy is so hostile toward players, and if it's due to a personal grudge. Giving a slight smirk, the man reveals that 17 years ago, he was a rookie swordsman sent on a mission to protect a village located in the Garua Mountains, a place where he discovered the nobility behind the swordsman's code, which he swore to uphold. However, the village was completely wiped out, including its residents, all because players established their guild base in the area and threw the villagers into the troll-infested mountains, which convinced him once and for all that players are nothing but parasites devouring this world, something he can no longer tolerate. Suddenly, he steps in front of our boy, She then says that maybe the man is right, since she can't deny that many problems started happening after players arrived. But Mose is the one who fought against the ill-intentioned players more than anyone else. So all the man is doing now is redirecting his hatred toward the nearest player. Agreeing, the master of Lozvan says that probably nothing is as pointless as fighting against ideologies, but that the ideology of the winner is the one that becomes truth. The man decides to stop talking and moves to attack, just like Ki and Kiho, who summon their two swords, which fly toward the enemy at high speed. But the man blocks both, quickly noticing that the elf was approaching from behind. Concerned, the protagonist concludes that the attack is very dangerous and resumes control of his swords. Changing his strategy, the man puts away his katana, as he looks at everyone with a dark stare. Mose is confused and wonders what that was. Behind him, Zaire shouts, warning Ki that she must dodge immediately. Without hesitation, the master of Lozvan activates his ability called Feather, creating a circle around his body that generates a powerful gust of wind, throwing the elf far away with full force. Everyone starts trying to shield themselves from the wind, when Zaire finally activates his ability and says it's time to escape. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.